Hey, Nope12. How you doing, buddy? What's going on? First one in the chat. True hero, of course, to be the first one in the chat here tonight. Hope you're doing well. Zayton Live, second place, and of course, far from second in my heart. How you doing tonight? Shaquille Oatmeal number 5. Good evening to you too, my friend. Edward Dojali has joined us. I thought I turned follower notifications off. I gotta fix those. If we're gonna do follows, I have to make them match the new tone that I did with everything else. Last night, I was thinking, you know what? I really ought to, if I'm ever gonna do streaming again, I really ought to clean up the stream, you know, because I didn't change anything about the layout or the design since basically I started, you know, for the last like 2 years. And so I did a little bit of that. First of all, what is the title of the stream show for you guys? Because it's supposed to say neoliberal shill office hours. And when I pull it up here, it says the new Cold War. Yeah, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to say shill office hours. I guess I gotta... Okay. Alright. Hopefully that does something. Not... Oh! It's because I used the word shill, which is banned! Oh! God, what a ridiculous rule that is. Okay. Live and you learn. Yes, Twitch bans the word shill. You wouldn't imagine it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But, I suppose, on a platform for which no small part of the income comes from shilling Raid Shadow Legends, you know, you don't want people using the S word, you know? So, glad we were able to discover that together. Bad Hoss Simra joined the neoliberal establishment. See, look, we did new colors here. New colors... And there's a custom message. Join the establishment. Simra says, I never meant a reflection on you or yours. Simra, hey, I understand. First of all, thank you for subscribing. Second of all, you gotta... Since you mentioned it here, you can't drink and Discord. Alright? You can drink, you can Discord. You can't drink and then Discord. Alright? So if you can agree to that... We'll put you back in, alright? Alright, okay. Thanks, buddy. No more. Yeah. Alright. ACAZ joined the neoliberal establishment. Wowie indeed, my friend. It's good to have you. Let me get Simmer back here in the chat here real quick. By the way, looks like we've got a hype train, folks. Hype train. Now, a hype train is a curious little phenomenon in which you subscribe to the channel, and in exchange for subscribing to the channel, you get all kinds of incredible benefits. You might be asking yourself, gosh, what are these benefits? What are these incredible benefits? Well, SH the Super, who just joined the neoliberal establishment, says, I'm subscribing for your hair exclusively. Well, first of all, not exclusively, because you also get to see me dance there. That's pretty cool. But beyond that, you also get to use some wonderful emotes. And I was thinking tonight, after a few more people get in here, maybe we should talk about, like, you know, some new emotes, right? What would be some good new emotes to put here in our channel? You know, things that maybe you would find useful in other channels. I don't know. Things like that, you know? Because as a Twitch partner, I can upload them and they go on Twitch automatically, alright? I think the worst that happens, yes, Ukrainian flag, good call. Going to make notes tonight here in my pad folio. My very professional pad folio, in fact. The Ukrainian flag, that's a good one. Ukraine, Taiwan. Tobin J. Stone, thank you so much for subscribing. And thank you for the kind words. And SH the Super, thank you so much for gifting 5 community subs to our wonderful community. I really do appreciate that. NATO flag. I thought we had that in there, but we may not. Let me see here. Do we have the NATO flag? Oh, you know, I don't think we do. Let's see. Yeah, NATO, Ukraine, Taiwan. Now, the rule is no political symbols, but is the flag of Ukraine or Taiwan really a political symbol? I mean, are these not symbols of the heart? Symbols of feeling? Symbols of idealism? They're not just mere political symbols. NATO might be a little different. Zoxic says, damn, it's been a while since I've been here. Indeed, it has, but it's good to have you here, my friend. Welcome. Welcome back. It's been a while since I did a stream. In fact, it's been a while since I did a stream that was not our recent interview with the one, the only, and Simmer Your Band, or Unbanned rather, the one, the only Canadian flag. Good one. The one, the only Alex Narasta of the Cato Institute, who, man, that was a good interview. If you were here for it, you got a taste of top tier quality. He was really good. UN flag, good one. Although Dylan Burns has that one, we might not want to copy him there. But thank you so much for subscribing, Prime Rivety. I appreciate that. So Alex Narasta gave us a great talk about immigration. I got to get that up on the YouTube channel. But man, it was great hearing from him. Yeah, that was a really good discussion, and it's not every day that you get to talk to somebody who not only knows the subject from their perspective, but who also knows it from the other perspective. We had people in here, skeptics of immigration who were dropping information, but who nonetheless, were, I think, also floored when Alex would hear the information. Oh yeah, 7% increase in jobs, or whatever it was, 7% decrease in employment. Yeah, I know that study. Here are all the ins and outs of that study. I thought that was something else. Florida emoji, good call. Florida emoji. Yeah, something Florida related. Maybe not a flag, maybe a flamingo? I don't know. Something Florida-like. All right, and that's, by the way, the flag here. The American flag, and then the flag of the great state of Florida. So, Lisa, thank you so much for gifting a subscription. I really do appreciate that. Gosh, you didn't have to, but it is much appreciated. Friday Boss Man number 1 says, I remember when I subbed to this channel around when COVID started. I also remember mentioning this in a sub alert about a year ago. Well, hey, it's always good to have you here, Friday Boss Man, one of our longtime community members and a great chatter. And I'll tell you, I don't know, man. It's the cover of Why Nations Fail. Like, I didn't have anything planned for tonight, but I thought it would be nice to chat a little bit about kind of just the stream generally, some things we might like to see, some things we might like to do, maybe what might be a good time slot to do this. Because I'll tell you, here's kind of how I was thinking about the stream. First of all, thank you so much, Daniel Anthony, for resubscribing. I believe I've got everybody. I don't think I missed anyone. And by the way, Lisa, thank you for gifting one to Granddad Christmas. I didn't even mention the hype train goal. If you do the hype train and we get it through level 5, I think everybody who participates gets some special Twitch evos. So that's fun. Pony Wings, how could I miss you? Thank you so much for subscribing now for 2 months. 2 wonderful months. It's been good to have you. Now, I got an email about the Neoliberal Conference. I don't know if I'm invited to the Neoliberal Conference. I got an email saying, hey, we'll send invites out soon. I don't know if I got an invite out yet. I might not. I'm not sure. But, there are a lot of wonderful people going. A lot of people who are really committed to the project and who are maybe a little more local. So, certainly no sour grapes if not. But I would love to go, so I certainly hope I get that invite. East India Trading Company? Gosh, I don't know if we do that. And on the one hand, certainly first global company. On the other hand, you know, bit of a history. I saw it was partnering with a New Democracy Project, which is a really weird name since New Democracy is the famed New Communist Initiative in China. Well, I don't think it would be fair for the People's Republic of China to get a perpetual claim over the phrase New Democracy. Hopefully not. Jeremiah made it sound like they couldn't call it the Neoliberal Conference for legal reasons. Look, I imagine that they are... Well, I shouldn't say I imagine. I think they are. I think they're gradually moving away from the word neoliberal. Right? So there will always be, of course, those of us who are the devotees of the neoliberal wing of the neoliberal project. But I think they're trying to move away from the word neoliberal. Since I think it always came... You know, it kind of originated from an ironic perspective. And that being said... I certainly don't feel that way. But I recognize that, you know, that's part of it. So I think that is the goal eventually, to move away. But, you know, maybe not. So, oh, it's a trademarked phrase by the University of California, Berkeley Philosophy Department. Right on, man. Hey, good for them. Hey, trademark what you can. Because that means you own it, folks. You can cash in. All right. So, hey, looks like we got 10 seconds left on the hype train. Thanks to everybody who subscribed, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, here's the deal tonight. I was thinking it would be fun to kind of catch up with folks a little bit, tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, and then see, hey, you know, what are some things maybe that we'd like to see on the stream, some things we might like to do. Thank you for the 15 subscriptions, everybody. I really do appreciate that. And, you know, just kind of go from there. So, first of all, have a little drink here. I'm drinking some Diet Coke tonight. I know I used to occasionally have a gin and tonic on stream. I don't think I can do that anymore because I get kind of sleepy. I get kind of tired, so it's no good. So, first of all, folks, age? Tomorrow's trials? You're asking me my age? What? You can't... You gotta guess. I'm not just gonna give it to you. Age. Poltergoose says, I don't mean to alarm you, but your hair is defying gravity. Thank you so much for that. Alright, why you can't drink? Oh. Alright. Oh, they're keeping the neoliberal branding for the time being. Right on, as they should. As they should. It signifies, I think, something different, you know, in the political discourse, you know. Not just another wing of the, you know, liberal elite. So, okay, first of all, basic questions, alright? It's been a while since I streamed. The sound, the lighting, what do you guys think? I've turned off alert sounds because they really play into my, you know, ADHD. I just can't even think straight when those sounds are going on and on and on and on and off, you know? So, I'm enjoying... I turned those off. You're quite red. Too red, perhaps. More skin. Bad Hoss Summer says, every time you run your fingers through your hair is sexy because you have hair. It's cozy? Okay, alright. So, hair is cringe, bald gang? Hey, soon enough we're all in that gang, right? Alright. So, here's some updates on what I'm up to. KFC heat lamp or porn set lighting. I just went without my ADHD meds for 5 days straight due to doing doctor stuff. I didn't get anything done. It's tough, man. Some kind of hair emote. That's a good meme. I like that. I think people would get a kick out of that. Alright. Bisexual lighting. I do have purple lighting, but I don't know. I decided to go with red. So, do you still do interviews? I do, actually. We just did one with Alex Narasta from the Cato Institute, and I just reached out to Twitter mutual Ajit Pai, former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. So maybe we'll do an interview with him, and we'll kind of go from there. Right? So, emojis. All right. Oh, so life updates. All right, life updates. Okay, interviews. So, first update. I'm not busy. Well, I guess a little bit of not really preparing for trial. Doing some work, I suppose, in anticipation of possible proceedings, but nothing bad. No, I work a lot more now. When I started streaming, it was actually... Okay, this music is not doing it for me. Hold on. Okay, all right. So when I first started streaming, I really didn't have much work to do because I had just finished a big case. Well, let's see. I hadn't finished it, but I had like one case. I had the oral argument part of the case left, and that was it. And then after that, just kind of months of waiting for that, and not a whole lot of work in between. And so I had a lot of time to stream. And longtime viewers like Forrest, for example, it's good to see you, buddy, may remember that I used to stream for hours and hours and hours and hours. Oh my god. Well, eventually I got busy again, and that became a little tougher. Another challenge with streaming for hours and hours and hours is the toll that it takes on relationships. And as many of you may know, I have a wonderful fiance. And, it can be hard to do that. Every night, 4 hours, like I was doing. So I took a bit of a step back. And I'm thinking, what would be a good way to get back into it? What would be a good way to kind of, get some good, regular streaming going again, right? Because one, I enjoyed it, and two, we have a great community of people here who I genuinely miss. I'm sure every streamer says this, particularly after people throw some subscriptions at them. But I do really genuinely miss all the people in this community. I know if you're in the Discord, and there's a link to our Discord in the chat, folks. If you're not in there, you certainly should check it out. It's a lot of fun. I know a lot of people probably say that, but I think we really do have a great community here. I don't know. I really always look forward to it. But it's also hard for me to kind of do things without a decent schedule in place, And if the schedule isn't all the time, whenever I can, I gotta think of one. And I was wondering, are there any streamers out there who stream for like maybe 1 or 2 hours, at a time instead of like 4 to 6? Because it seems like people stream for like long periods of time. That seems like the norm. And I don't think I could do that. But I think I could maybe do 1 or 2 hours a night, And I think I could make that kind of regular. Tobin, hey, it was good to have you, buddy. Good luck on your essay, and we'll talk with you soon. So that's kind of one question I've got. Are there folks out there that stream for on a regular basis, but for a shorter period of time, Because I was thinking if I had something like that, I could do 1 hour of prepared type content, like, hey, here are the 3 things going on today that are worth talking about, right? And then the next hour we can kind of, BS like we're doing now. Or I could do an interview, and then we could kind of BS, for an hour. 2 hours seems like a real sweet spot I could do, So, Prime Liberty says, I feel like a lot of those people doing consistent long streams are not employed or partially employed. Bit of a challenge, I suppose. Although, of course, for a lot of them, I think Twitch is their job, Into the Wannabe, okay, not, but I'm gonna be the first, right on. Bad Hoss says, I was there and the young gays literally sub for sub with Antares. Wow. National Bolshevist says, should drop that neoliberalism and become a national Bolshevist. National Bolshevism is, as far as ideologies go, it's hard to think of a more memey ideology than National Bolshevism. National Bolshevism is like the Hearts of Iron 4 ideology, right? Like, dude, what if the Germans and the Soviets joined forces? Ah! Alright. That being said, it does have more of an intellectual pedigree than I'm giving it credit for. But to the extent I see references to it. Alright. Real Altreus, yes, he disappeared. I wonder what was up with that. I hope he's doing alright. He was doing well last time we talked. Alright. The people who do this full-time don't do just an hour a day, but there's no reason you couldn't. You're not trying to be full-time. Right on. Is this the Epcot background music? Yes, it is. You got a good eye, or a good ear, rather. Alright. I don't know. I like it. I don't care. Let me get back to the chat here. What next-gen technology most excites you? I don't know. Life extension, generally. I'm always excited by that kind of stuff. Alright, okay, so it seems like there's some interest in that. That's kind of what I'm thinking, is something semi-prepared, you know? Where people don't wander in and stay because of how long the stream is, but rather they treat it more like a scheduled YouTube video airing. Yeah, I think something like that would be good. An idea that I was floating for a while was that I would make YouTube videos. That's tough. Takes a lot of work, it turns out, to be a regular YouTube content creator. The stream is nice because I can do a little prep work and then, you know, have a good hour or so. So that's another thing I'm thinking is, you know, I'd like to do this for a little while. Okay, so hour, 2 hours, folks are interested in that. Okay, good stuff. Basically, streamline his content using his Twitter popularity to snag hot interviews and stream those. Well, I do kind of like that. Do dollar store hauls on YouTube. I can't do IRL streams. I tried them for a while early on in the channel's history, but the problem with doing IRL streams is that it is the most awkward goddamn thing you can imagine. It is so cripplingly awkward that it is hard to think of something quite so awkward as walking around with your phone, or God forbid anything more complex than your phone, in a Target or in public, and just kind of talking to it like, hello. You know, like, it's so weird, alright? So the IRL streams are generally, I just can't do them. And I know it's entertaining for others, but I can't help but think it probably creeps people out, you know, when, like, I'm in a store, or when, you know, we're out in public, you know, and it's like, hey, who wants to be on my internet show you never heard of, you know? So, not sure about that, but we did do one, I think, really good bit of real-life content for a while. And that one bit of real-life content we did that was really good was the gym streams, all right? I really enjoyed those. Now, those might make a comeback here later this year because I just started an incredible weight loss program called Calibrate. And the big idea there is you take medication, you change your diet, and you start exercising, and through all of that, you gradually lose weight and become healthier and build more sustainable habits and all that. And the reason I'm doing that is that, one, I'm, you know, a little overweight, but two, because I have terrible habits. You know, I when I was in law school, I started working in my first year of law school, and you know, gosh, I started at 20 hours a week, but pretty quickly I went to 40 hours a week. And then I was still doing school full time. And so I did really good. I was really productive. I was really in the zone. Learned a lot, but also developed some terrible habits, and never quite shook them. So I want to work on kind of building better habits, getting healthier, all that kind of good stuff. And I think that that might involve some workout streams. So we did some of those. They're on our YouTube channel, which you're welcome to check out. And but those were pretty fun. So I'd like to do some of those again once we get into that. Otherwise, though, I don't think we'll be doing much in real life content because it is always so cringe. Now that being said, yeah, we're not going to eat. Yeah, that's like rock bottom, right? When I'm cramming Papa John's while I'm streaming, it's no good, man. I mean, you gotta class it up, Not to mention, I mean, stuff's gonna kill me if I keep it up. Who's Destiny working out more? Is he getting all healthy? He's still drinking the Soylent? Doing all that. Soylent's pretty good, actually. It's pretty, all things considered, a pretty well-balanced food product. I mean, you use debate tactics. It's pretty good. Is this a Pokemon background song? This is calm Nintendo games music to finish the day, so it might be a Pokemon background song. I'm not sure. Actually, I think I can probably... There's probably a list of them. Yes, this is Verbank City, Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. So, yeah. Alright, Bossman says, Bastiat has just been timing his YouTube posts with Biden's legislative successes. That's pretty good. Do you get hot wearing a suit in your house while sitting still? In the summer I do, but fortunately it's in the winter, and so I do not. It's actually quite comfortable. All right. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking there, and that's one thing I'm doing. So, exercise, diet, been working a lot, but I think I'm getting a little bit better in terms of work-life balance, So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. The only question I have beyond that is whether there might be, I don't know. Do any of you guys watch Twitch in the morning? Like for all of you who are here now, I guess, do you ever watch Twitch 12 hours ago? Or 12 hours from now? Do you ever do that? 6 a.m. here, not much on. That's kind of something I was wondering about, is maybe whether that might be... I'm a human being. I was wondering whether that might not be a better slot, maybe, if I could do it. That would require a little work accommodation, but I don't know that it would be impossible if I maybe worked another hour or so into the evenings. But I was thinking nobody else really streams then. A lot of live stuff happens, during that time, so... Might be worth thinking about. Okay. So it's good to know. Morning a possibility. Probably going to stick with the evening, but, I know Irrelevant does that, although he streams, like, middle of the night morning. I was thinking about, like, 10 a.m. Eastern, So, Jack AM does this, but his audience are all unemployed. Well, the thing I like to imagine is, and I don't know if this is a stretch, the thing I like to imagine is that... Twitch would maybe not be so different from like talk radio, where you flip it on and you don't necessarily watch it the whole time. You have it on in the background, but you're not like eyes on the screen the entire time. And some people are, or you can jump in the chat when you feel like it. But, so if you were like working, you could maybe listen to it in the background if you wanted, something like that. Big gap between 7 and noon, huh? Okay. Well. All right, something like that. So, something I'm thinking about. Carshake says I'm a lefty, but that joke slaps. I didn't think it was a joke, but pretty good. All right, so that's good to know. That's good to know. Okay, so the here's another reason that I ran into some trouble here with the streaming. So for a while, I was doing debate panels. A lot of debate panels. Oh, Jack. Oh, I remember who this is now. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about... I don't know why I was imagining some other streamer. I know who you're talking about, and that's... Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Yeah. None of that. All right. So for a while, we were doing debate panels. Now, the thing with the debate panels is, after a while, I was sort of starting to feel like, you guys ever watched those videos like Ben Shapiro crushes kids' question like Dixie cups? You know? You ever seen any of those? I was starting to think like, is this really the best thing that I could do on Twitch? You know, to kind of sit on a panel for 3 to 4 hours and, talk for about 20% of the time and sort of like, I don't know, so I don't know. I enjoy them sometimes, and certainly that does seem to be where the biggest viewership would come in. But, I don't know, man. I always felt kind of dirty afterward, like it was a big waste of time. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I'm a lefty and I miss you on panels. Well, thank you, Nirvana. I appreciate that. Out of curiosity, why? Why do you miss me on panels? Bastiat, did you see Ben Shapiro got wrecked by a kindergartner? I did. He was, it was pretty cringe. When he was saying, like, he started out with the whole taxes or theft thing. Whatever. But it just was a lot of, like, cringe stuff afterward, even for somebody like me who was sort of sympathetic to the economic arguments he was making in a big, broad sense. It was just like, it's like, well, the taxes are when the government takes your money and wastes it. Well, is that really the best way to just kind of start people off on government? Just kind of inculcate, I don't know, cynicism? You know? Maybe it is. Maybe that would, maybe that leads to the freest society. But I don't know, man. I mean, they're obviously not all wasted. You know, we have government for, purposes that most people generally agree on, Like, is the money wasted on the military? Or on the police, like as an institution, as a concept? Even if you disagree with the uses of the military, even if you disagree with the conduct of the police, theoretically, almost everybody agrees that we need some sort of military, some sort of police. And so, when you show up and you just say, well, kids, government's a waste of time and money. It's like slapdash anarchism, It's so I don't really appreciate it. Don't really appreciate it. Like, I get it, Kojak, in the moral sense that taxes are theft. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, you can't really stop there because at the end of the day, government is inevitable, right? Taxes will exist, all right? Government is inevitable because there will always be men and, women too, but, for the sake of this, we're talking about men in the sense of mankind. There will always be men who will decide that they have a good reason to use force and violence against others, to take from them for themselves. That's inevitable, right? And in whatever form that takes, if there's no state, that amounts to a state, right? That's, in the simplest form, what government does, right? So, if you acknowledge, as at least I do, and I think it's a very well-supported proposition, that is inevitable. That is a part of the human experience. You can think, well, okay, maybe we can make government better, right? I mean, if government is inevitable, maybe we can make government better, right? And you know, just that sort of approach of like government is all bad. It's no, you know, it can never do anything right. It can never do anything good. I just don't like it. You know, it just seems pointless. You know, it reminds me a lot of people who say, look, you know, abolish the police, abolish the military. You know, we don't need government. We can get rid of it all. You know, one way or another, we can just have self-organizing cooperatives and on, all the rest of it. I don't believe that, right? I believe that if there is not an institution with a monopoly of force, that some other institution, some other group will come in and just establish one, right? And the only alternative to that is the occasional brief interregnum between various monopolies of force. So, long and short of it, just that sort of argument of, you know, government is always bad, always a problem, I just don't appreciate it. In fact, I think even the thoughtful libertarian will agree with kind of what I just said, because there's a guy, I believe this was a quote from Ludwig von Mises. I was trying to figure out if it was him or Hayek. Von Mises says, I'm paraphrasing here, but you know, in the final analysis, government really is the most noble and worthwhile institution of all, because it is the one that is necessary for all the other institutions to exist, to operate. And to come from Ludwig von Mises, who, you know, also famous for condemning a room full of libertarians as a bunch of damned socialists, you know, I think anybody can recognize that government is inevitable. All you can do is try and make it the best you can, right? So, anyway, not a fan of, I saw that clip from Ben Shapiro and I thought it was pretty cringe. All right. Thanks for the kind words about my intellectual honesty, though. I appreciate that, Nirvana. All right. Yes, Bololak, I am indeed here. All right. Bastiat, if you didn't stop streaming, I'd be more famous than I am. Regularly pulling 100 or 2,000 with 1,000 without raids. There was a time when we were streaming very regularly, and I think scoring 400 to 500 viewers on average. That being said, you got to keep that up. Can't take breaks. So, you know. I don't know if we'll ever get back to that, but of course if we do, hey, so much the better, right? I'm thinking now, so Real Bonnie McKee here asks, I've only stopped by a couple of times. What is your streaming schedule, streaming goal? I can imagine you could carve out a Twitch niche for yourself, something like legal case studies from law school or elsewhere. You know enough about to explain for a couple hours at a time. Yeah, I don't know. You know, that's kind of something that I think about sometimes, because we almost never talk about the law here, which is quite strange when you think about it. I mean, to give you a little bit of context here, if you take a look at let me collapse this here just a sec. Okay. If you take a look at my incredible new let's see. You take a look at my incredible new set of Twitch panels here. You can see, I guess you can't quite see because of the chat. Let me turn that off real quick. All right. You can see that, you know, I'm very much, hey, I'm a lawyer. Hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I don't provide legal advice. Look at me. I'm a lawyer. But we almost never talk about the law. And there are a couple of reasons for that, which is, I don't know, something kind of strange, right? Couple of reasons, like there are streamers who talk about it all the time, like Pisco95, right? He loves talking about this stuff. He was talking about this stuff before he got his bar license. You know, he loves talking about it. He was talking about it while he was he was talking about it while he was in school. So, first of all, did you seize the means of your energy infrastructure yet? Alas, I did not. But, you know. So, a couple things about that. One, I don't usually provide legal advice of any kind to anyone in my professional capacity without doing research first, right? I don't know if this is something that other lawyers do. And if we have any lawyers in the chat, we occasionally have a few. If we have any other lawyers in the chat, I'd be curious kind of how you do this. But generally speaking, I do not like to just give off-the-cuff advice or to make off-the-cuff conclusions, except in the most general stuff. Because I feel like, look, you know, I wanna read my source material first, and I want to write it out. You know, I want to put something in writing. You know, before I say, okay, this is my official conclusion, right? You know, this is what I have to say about the law, right? And I know I'm not alone on that. I was talking with the incredible YouTuber Legal, and I asked him, hey, would you like to come to my stream sometime? It would be just great. I really like your work. Really admire what you do. And he says, well, you know, I don't really like unprepared content, you know? Makes sense, you know? Makes sense. You know, don't want to, you know, you got to prepare. You got to get that stuff right, you know? Not just for, you know, professional reasons, you know, but because you don't want to mislead people, right? And so that's one thing. The other thing is, I just generally, I suppose, I'm not so interested in it after work. The last case I was really interested in was that vaccine mandate case, you know, but that was more for the policy, you know, type conclusions. No, he's a good guy. I mean, I understand it. I mean, I guess it makes sense why you don't really see him on streams. Or maybe he just didn't like me. You know, that's fine too, but I'll take his word for it. That he just didn't really want to do unprepared content, you know, professional guy. So, what was I going to say? What were we talking about here? Oh, yeah, I just generally am, I don't know, I don't take, like, a lot of interest in it outside of work for some reason. I don't know. I feel like I kind of pour it all into work, and then after work, I want to talk about things I can riff on, you know, like Ukraine and Russia, you know, foreign policy, that kind of stuff. As you're getting older, memory is clearly diminishing. Well, I'll say this. I did recently get remedicated for my attention deficit disorder, which, that is a thing that, I don't know. Maybe not everybody needs that. I need it, you know. Hey, Reef Botany, right on. I hope you're having a good, hope you're having a good, I don't want to say good time at work, but I hope your deliveries are smooth and easy. Customers are pleasant, friendly, or just, you know, not there. Either way, right? Did you get your ADHD diagnosis before or after law school? After. I'll tell you, I have always had these problems, you know, with focusing. Like, you see me, right? Like, just a minute ago, I talked about one thing, you know, different than, you know, my train of thought for 1 second. And suddenly I'm just like, what was I talking about, you know? And, I tell you, it just is so hard for me to focus. I've tried to optimize the stream a bit so that, I have a little, you know, a little bit of an easier time, handling this kind of stuff. Like, you may remember that in former times, when you would subscribe to the channel, you would get this kind of ping sound, you know? I can't do that stuff, man. Like, it is too distracting. It is also similarly distracting when I listen to any kind of background music that has words in it. I just suddenly, just too much to process. I can't do it at one time. I can't focus on anything, you know? And streaming is a good activity for people, I think, who have, as Nirvana says, you know, what may be renamed as executive function disorder. It is kind of good for that. I think, as ANZ here mentions, I bet ADHD is super overrepresented among streamers and their viewers. For sure. I have no doubt about that. And I think it makes sense because it's a good activity if you like constant stimulation, you know? But here's what I don't like. What I don't like is the way that sometimes I would get sort of overwhelmed with chat, alerts, argument, back and forth. Sometimes I would get like so just like, caught up in it that I would start kind of responding very, not very thoughtfully, Especially when some kind of like commie would come into the chat and be like, America sucks, and I would start just like arguing with them, right? I don't like that. Okay, Simra, I get it. You don't have to apologize anymore. All right, buddy? We're good. All right? Just let the chat flow, buddy, all right? So yeah, I would find myself kind of like deleting streams a lot because I'd just be thinking, I don't feel like that was my best. I don't feel like that's content that I would like to stand by in the future and say, yep, you know what? What I said, that's worth listening to, So I've tried to kind of optimize things a little bit so that the alerts are a little easier. I got a stream deck here that I can't show you here, but it has all the buttons. Actually, I can show you a picture of it. I took a picture of it. All the buttons that I did. Let me just pull this up here. Boom, boom, boom. Just a sec. Let me pull this up. I'm kind of proud of all these buttons. They are all very neatly designed. All right, they're very fancy buttons. Okay, let's pull this up. Okay, right there. All right, right there. See? So, so I can change the lighting and stuff, and tell you to follow me on the Twitter here, right there. Follow me on the Twitter. Boom, right there. Follow me on twitter.com. Actually, you probably can't see it on there. Right? Follow me on the Twitter, right there. All right. So stuff like that, So make it a little easier to kind of deal with sort of the being overwhelmed by executive functions. Now, I don't know if this is something I was born with or if it is the result of spending my entire life behind a computer screen. Where's the nuclear button? Oh, I do have a button on there that I can use to clear the chat out, so that's pretty good. Oh, and I can change the lighting. So I can brighten it up if I want, darken it, turn it off. All that good stuff, Okay. Let's turn that up a little bit. All right. So yeah, lots of good stuff there to make that just a little bit easier for me. Where's the Coke button? I don't have a Coke button. It'd be nice to have a little fridge with a, with the Coke, a Coke scent or something. I think Lecture Fan is a little fridge or something. One of these streamers does. Abermat says, do you use pomade in your hair? I do not. I use a great product called Kevin Murphy Styling Hold. It's just a small amount of paste. I just use a small amount of it. Very tiny, like pea-sized amount. Rub it through my fingers, run it through my hair, and, that's that. Right? Ever tried toothpaste in your hair? I have not. At least not on purpose. Alright, red and blue for my theater experience? Right on, yeah. I do have red on, so I could try the blue lighting. But I have found that I just don't like it so much. Let me show you here. This is blue lighting. Actually, I kind of like that. It's not too bad. There's a little bit of blue lighting. We'll try that. Do you have any preference for Biden's Supreme Court pick? No, although I wish he had handled it differently. I think that... so kind of the controversy with Joe Biden's Supreme Court pick here is that he's basically he said, we're going to pick a black woman, was what he said. And sort of the controversy is, well, okay, why are you making a pick based on race? Well, okay, so the idea of a Supreme Court that is representative of the population in some way is not particularly controversial and not particularly new. The only thing that's really new about it is that he has made this decision on the basis of race instead of on the basis of other characteristics from the past. Like, for example, Ronald Reagan made it a point to say that he was going to pick the first woman for the Supreme Court. Lyndon Johnson picked, I think it was his intent, although I don't know that he announced this intent ahead of time or not. I don't remember. I want to say that he did, to put the first black American on the court. And I think there might have been something similar, the first time a Jewish American was put on the court. But before racial balance, there was religious balance, like I sort of alluded to. The idea of, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, we got to have them on the court. And before that, before race, before gender, before religion, there was geographical balance. There was the idea that, hey, we have to have justices from the South, and from the West, and from the North, from the East. We got to have a balance of justices by region, so that the whole country feels represented in the court. So there have always been, these attempts to kind of have the Supreme Court be, representative of the population. Aren't there no Protestants in the court right now? I don't know. I want to say there are no Protestants on the court right now. I think it's 6. I want to say it's 6 Catholics and 3 Jews, but I'm not sure. Supreme Court justices by religion. Let's see. I want to say that they are... let's see. Religion... Okay. The only exception is Gorsuch is apparently marked as Anglican/Catholic. It's just effectively Catholic, I'd say. That's got to be the most... Well, I'm no expert, but from my understanding, that is probably the most Catholic of the Protestant denominations. So I don't know, but so there are actually 2 Jews and 7 Catholics on the Supreme Court. And prior to that, it was, and you're right, Tower. I mean, of course, at the start, it was a given that everybody in the Supreme Court would be white and male. So, kind of my bigger point is that there's always been this attempt to sort of balance, in terms of how the country, looks and things like that. And first it was geography, right? And then it became a little more about religion. And it became a little more about, adding some women to the court. And then it became a little bit more about race. Now, I think that to me, as somebody who, thinks it's best to try and, make it a priority to say, hey, you know what? We want meritocracy, and I want somebody who really represents my judicial philosophy. I think it would have been nice for Joe Biden to say, something to that effect, and then announce a pick who happened to meet his demographic, preference, right? I think it would have been the best optics. I think that would have been, hey, the best way to, to handle, to kind of get that win, and to kind of, maximize, I guess, institutional trust, right? But I don't think it really makes much of a difference, because again, like I say, the idea of a Supreme Court, that tries to balance out what the population looks like is just not new. And for somebody who says, look, this isn't how you do hiring at a normal job, well, that's true, but it's not a normal job, right? I mean, it's a panel of 9 people who have a huge sway over the Constitution of the United States. So the idea that this panel of people shouldn't be sort of representative is, I think, I think it's reasonable to want something like that. That being said, I personally would like to maintain the forms of meritocracy, and then say, hey, look, all things being equal, there are a lot of great qualified black justices out here. Well, maybe we'll try and make the court a little more representative, But that being said, there are thousands of people who qualified for the Supreme Court, and I am sure that whoever Joe Biden picks will be eminently qualified, and will be a great addition to the court, So, that being said, I'm also a bit of a institutionalist in the sense that I don't... Yeah, maybe this is just naive. I'm sure a lot of people would say it is, but I like the Supreme Court, I feel like they do okay for the most part, So, I don't know. I'm not too worried about it, really, I mean, now that being said, if I felt a little more strongly about abortion rights, I might feel differently in a couple months. We'll see. Are there people who don't like it, like want it abolished? Yeah, I'd say so. Well, it depends on, I suppose, what you mean. The thing about it is, let me see if there are any questions here that I want to answer before I move on. Yeah, I'm sure at some point the discussion will be, like Habs21 says, first LGBT justice. Although I tend to think that in the future, in years to come, in future administrations, that'll be hopefully something a little more like, hey, isn't this cool? This isn't like, again, the primary thing this person is known for, but hey, it's cool that we've also got to buy this represent the American people in this way too, So, no atheists. Well, I imagine with respect to many elements of American public life, there have been plenty of atheists, or at least a few, on the Supreme Court. They just don't really, they're not open about it. That's my hunch, but in any event. Did the courts wrongfully decide Marbury versus Madison? I don't think so. And that actually is a good question, or a good lead into the question here. So, Kojak asks, are there people who don't like Supreme Court, like want to abolish? And I think there certainly are. Like, the Supreme Court in the United States, what's worse, picking as a justice based on political leaning or race, given the massive hiring pool? That's a good point, right? Like, political leaning, is that really so much better? Yeah, I guess not really. Given America's unique history with race, I understand it being tendentious, but I don't think there's a problem. I don't think there's a problem with doing what President Biden is doing. I just think he probably could have rolled it out in a better way. All right. Anyway, big point. The bigger point here. All right. I don't see, and I'm open to arguments otherwise here. I don't see how a Constitution works without the Supreme Court. Without the Supreme Court, I don't see how we can have a Constitution that limits the power of government, in the way that ours does. And our Constitution is kind of unique in that sense because we do have an entity that, as a result of Marbury versus Madison, and all the cases since, has claimed for itself, though I think very reasonably, the power of judicial review. So what's judicial review? Judicial review means that when Congress passes a law, or, whoever, the states, if it, touches on federal matters in some way, or, a constitutional issue. Well, we'll stick with Congress here to make it simple. When Congress passes a law, the Supreme Court can review that law if a case or controversy has arisen under that law, and then determine the constitutionality of that law, right? So, first of all, there has to be a case or controversy, right? Congress cannot just pass a law and then say, it affects nobody, and nobody sues, and, the Supreme Court can't preemptively say, hey, this law violates the Constitution in some way, right? And we do have Justice Amy Coney Barrett in the chat, so Justice Barrett, you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on anything here. All right, so that's the basics of judicial review, right? The Supreme Court can strike laws down. It can strike executive actions down. If a president does something that violates the Constitution or otherwise violates federal law, the Supreme Court can say no, stop. Parties can seek an injunction, put an end to it. And that's a pretty big deal, right? That's a pretty big deal. Because if you don't have that, I'll tell you, I don't understand how you can enforce the Constitution or a Constitution in the way that we in the United States understand the Constitution, which is something that does not just express our values as a people, right? But that represents real binding guarantees, right? If you have a statute, or if you have a constitutional provision like the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no law, among other things, infringing on the freedom of speech. It's paraphrasing, it's not the actual text. Well, if you don't have the Supreme Court, I don't know who enforces that other than the Congress. And if the Congress enforces it, then ultimately, it's not a limit on Congress, right? If you say Congress shall make no law, and the body that determines what that means is Congress, then it seems to be no more restraint on Congress than the British Parliament has. And the British Parliament is ultimately the purest form of parliamentary supremacy, which means that when Parliament passes a law, that's it. That's the law. There is no higher authority than Parliament. That's it. So if Parliament tomorrow says, hey, you know what? Freedom of speech, we don't do that. That's over, right? We're not doing that anymore. That's it, right? Because Parliament can decree. That's the law, right? That's the foundation of the British system of government. Not all parliamentary systems, but the British parliamentary system. Parliamentary supremacy is the bedrock concept, right? And I don't understand how you can have a check on that without something like a Supreme Court. Because if you like what you just described, Violent Smoker, would seem to amount to something like a Supreme Court. Somebody who says, okay, there's a higher body of law that even Congress must bend to, and that body of law is interpreted by this group of people, and means that sometimes, even though our elected representatives in Congress and our elected president have taken one course of action or another, it's invalidated. We are undoing it. The law has been stricken down, the president has been stopped, whatever. If you don't have somebody doing that, in the form of Supreme Court like we have, or in some other form, I just think a constitution ultimately is not worth the paper it's written on. It's just what the founders, I think, called parchment guarantees. Which is to say, it's something written on paper, but which has no teeth. So, I don't really see an alternative to the Supreme Court. I can imagine other ways that we might do the Supreme Court. Perhaps life tenure is not necessary anymore. Perhaps it's a problem. Perhaps there should be more justices. Perhaps there ought to be some more rules on how the Supreme Court can handle decisions. What it takes for them to overrule, a lower court decision, or undo a law from Congress, whatever. But there's got to be some entity like that. And Violent Smoker says, well, instead of justices, we can just have people chosen by lot. And that's not the craziest idea. Not the craziest idea. Actually, lower court. I mean, that's not really a necessary element of the kind of institution I'm talking about here. I guess that's any court can overrule the lower court, but the bigger point, though, is the idea that if you believe in the notion of a written constitution that can restrain legislators and other officials in government, one that is difficult to amend, right? And that's our constitutional model, and I believe it's quite rare, all things considered. It's not a very common system. But if you believe in that system, as I do, as somebody who wants limited government, I don't see another way to make our Constitution work than something like a Supreme Court, even if the Supreme Court, we might want it to work a little differently in one way or another, So that's my answer there. People might want to get rid of the Supreme Court. I don't see how you ever could. Some people want to get rid of judicial review. I think that would be a very tragic mistake. So, all right. We just abolish all the courts in Congress and make Bastiat rule like a despot. If I were a despot, I would reestablish something not unlike what we've got now. Well, who checks the checkers, says HeBob1. What's stopping the Supreme Court from saying we're going to pick cases by flipping a coin rather than reasoning from the Constitution? Well, you are right. At the moment, there's not really a lot of checks on the checkers. It's all sort of, I guess, it comes down to a few things. One, who picks the people on the Supreme Court, right? There's some check there, but it is a preemptive check. Now, the American legal profession is something that, if you're selecting people for government from the American legal profession, you can count on, in a sense, a sort of lifetime of training and immersion in sort of legal processes, a sort of spirit of legalism, procedure, respect and appreciation for procedure. So that's something, And Mr. Kowalski is right. Supreme Court justices can be impeached. Now, I don't believe it's ever happened. I don't think it's ever happened. But the threshold for impeachment is, I believe... Has it happened with a Supreme Court justice? I know it's happened with lower court justices, but Supreme Court justices? Members, right? Yeah. Well, they're members of the court, but they are Supreme Court justices. I don't think... has it? Let me Google here. Has a Supreme Court justice been impeached? Ooh! The only justice to be impeached was Associate Justice Samuel Chase in 1805. He was impeached by the House, but acquitted by the Senate. All right, so, Samuel Chase. That's true. Justice Abe Fortas was strong-armed into resigning. That's true. Old Samuel Chase, founding father of the United States, he gets thrown off the Supreme Court. Well, not thrown off, but somebody tries. Samuel Chase, folks, right there. Mad respect for the first justice, perhaps the first federal official to ever be impeached, 1805. All right. Now, as for why don't we have a coin flip, why don't we do something like that? I don't know. I tend to think that, when you're dealing with the kind of matters of law that we deal with, especially in the modern era, because law is now so complex, a lot of the easy stuff, or easier stuff, I suppose, to the extent it ever exists, has been decided, right? I think it's good to have experts in the field, Touring news. It's so good to see you, buddy. Stay good, Miss Florida. Hey, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Let's see. Chat, has Bastiat answered questions on his thoughts on Breyer's departure and his thoughts on the nominees? I don't have any thoughts on the nominees, really, or Breyer's departure. I guess I'm glad that he's leaving so that he can be replaced. Beyond that, I'm not really sure. I've only... I don't really know much. I remember for a while there was a big desire among liberals to get this fellow by the name of Goodwin Liu on the court. That's not going to happen now. Of course, Joe Biden has, set forth demographic specifications for who he wants to have in the court. I can't say I'm just am aware of anybody who, meets the specifications. So I don't know, But yeah, I'm sure he'll pick someone good, And it's hard for me to think of a justice who's been like, who has been, like bad in the sense of like they, don't put, good effort into what they're doing. They don't write, reasonable opinions, even when I disagree with the conclusion of the opinions. I don't know. There are people whose takes I disagree with, but to say like they're idiots, I couldn't say that. Say that they were, dumb, I couldn't say that. It is the difference, I suppose, between crime and sin. I may think you're wrong, but I don't think you've done anything wrong. Thoughts on Richard Posner? I don't know a lot about Richard Posner, but I believe he is the fellow behind, kind of the biggest proponent of the law and economics school. Also, Cavity Creeps, Justice Thomas has started speaking a lot this past year or two, but we'll talk about that later. I believe that's Richard Posner's kind of claim to fame is law and economics, and I used to read more on Richard Posner when I was in law school. I used to really enjoy him because I was very cynical about the law, and I thought his kind of take on law was a much more reasonable way to address it. I am now. Let me see if I can find some Richard Posner takes here. I'm now sort of skeptical. Let me see here. What are some examples here? Let's see. Let's see if I can find the, okay. It's kind of a yeah, let's see. Okay. Yeah, this is Yoshi's Island music. Yeah. Gosh, I wish I had more specific stuff in mind. I can kind of only give you my generic take on Richard Posner, because it's just... I used to read him when I was in law school, but I just haven't read much about him since. But, okay. Yeah, okay, here's a provision, or not a provision. Here's something he said once that I just didn't like. All right. He has called his approach to judging pragmatic. He says, quote, I pay very little attention to legal rules, statutes, constitutional provisions. A case is just a dispute. The first thing you do is ask yourself, forget about the law, what is a sensible resolution of the dispute? The next thing is to see if a recent Supreme Court precedent or some other legal obstacle stood in the way of ruling in favor of that sensible resolution. And the answer is that's actually rarely the case. When you have a Supreme Court case or something similar, they're often extremely easy to get around. I guess the thing about the law, especially at the level that somebody like Richard Posner practices it, because he's a judge in the Chicago, I think, is that the 7th Circuit? Let's see. Yeah, 7th Circuit. And he's the, Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals. So he's like, as high as you can get without being on the Supreme Court. At that level, you're dealing with, kind of the front lines of constitutional law. And I just don't think cases and controversies are themselves at that level to be looked at in isolation, right? I mean, I think you got to think about, the implication on the law that you're working with, right? I mean, to try and get around the law and resolve the for the sake of resolving the dispute, I don't really like that. I mean, again, once you get to that level, right below the Supreme Court, federal law, your dispute is not purely a matter of the private parties anymore. It is also a matter of public concern. It's also a matter of, it's also a matter of public interest, and precedent really matters. I mean, that's at the core of our system. So to try and get around, and again, I'm not trying to impugn him in any way. I'm just I'm trying to give you kind of my reaction to his approach, his very practical approach. To the extent you're trying to kind of get around, I guess, the Supreme Court precedent to come to the decision you want to come to, I think that is a problem, because ultimately, the point of these, actually, right here, what OGS Cicero says, common law versus civil law, right? The point is to maintain not just the right decision in an individual case, but to maintain a coherent body of law. Something that people can make decisions based on, some kind of predictability, some certainty. And I saw here that what I. Cowridge says, if you're not following rules and precedents, you'll get overturned. Not necessarily, because again, the Supreme Court has full authority to choose the cases that it hears. Now, if you nakedly defy a Supreme Court decision, well, probably they will make it a point to take up your case, and overturn it, overrule you. But, you can imagine a situation where they're like, well, we're not quite happy with that outcome, but we really don't want to touch this issue right now, Like maybe it's something, I don't know, something to do with abortion, for example. And Chief Justice Roberts is thinking about it. It's like, my God, we just had a terrible abortion case in the last session, tore the public's image, it's public's feelings about the court apart. Do I really want to parse this abortion case out, go through all that again? No. We'll kick that can down the road, Let some other court deal with it, down the line, as in some later Supreme Court, or maybe some, we'll wait to see what other federal circuits, federal courts of appeals, how they handle these issues. So I see people in the chat saying precedent's overrated. Precedent's useful when it serves upholding the institution of law and democratic republic. It's not an end in itself. Sure. But it is important. You can't relitigate every case. You can't reinvent the wheel every time if you want to get anything done, right? At some point you do have to be able to. Justice Scalia. Actually, let me see if I can find some better music here. Justice Scalia had a really good. Let's see. Let me see if I can find something here. Okay. This is a little dark. I was looking for some kind of research music. Okay, alright. Alright. So Justice Scalia had a really good point one time, right? I wouldn't say I guess I would say I'm a Scalia fan, at least in the sense of his writing, I don't think I'm a fan in the sense of like kind of how he would, I feel, sort of twist things to get to the conclusions about conservative morality that he wanted to get to, but certainly as far as a writer or a thinker goes, he was top tier. He had a coherent philosophy of law, which is not something everybody's got. Like, for example, Justice Breyer, when you listen to Justice Scalia talk about how he decides cases, and you listen to Justice Breyer talk about how he decides cases, you may not like the conclusions Justice Scalia comes to, but I think it's hard to deny that it is just a more coherent and easily understood, I think, maybe even more democratic, depending on how you evaluate that, means of approaching cases. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So his point that he makes is this. The point that he makes is... God, what was the point that he makes? See, attention, executive function disorder here. Let me scroll back up. Precedent. Okay. So, he's like, okay, imagine a case comes to us about guns, all right? And the lawyer starts talking, and he says, okay, Justice of the Supreme Court, here's the deal, with the Second Amendment, here's the controversy at issue. And somebody interrupts him and says, counsel, do you have authority? Do you have authority to, do you think we have authority to decide this issue? Now, what do you mean? Do you think Marbury versus Madison was correctly decided? Hey, let's talk about that, right? Let's, do we have authority to decide this issue? And you can imagine kind of going from there, Like, imagine if you had to do that every time, something comes before the court. Now, that being said, well, I wouldn't call it, as he who walks below says, I wouldn't call precedent point of diminishing returns. I would say that there's precedent, right? And then there's precedent, all right? Gosh, I almost want to find what he said, but because that would take some time, I'll try and summarize it, all right? So if you give me a precedent, and I'm pretending to be Scalia here now. You give me a precedent, all right? And that precedent is something I, as a judge, can work with, right? I can make decisions. I can use that precedent for legal reasoning, right? It's a case that I can work with in that legal sense. Okay, there's some value there. Is it a case that is, the outcome of which has been generally accepted by the American people, by the legal profession, Marbury versus Madison. That's one such case. Roe v. Wade. That is not one such case. Many people have accepted it, but it is it has been controversial from the start. It still is, right? Now, you may think that's the correct answer, but in the sense of like which precedents are more vulnerable than others, which precedents do we think about, which precedents have more weight than others, certainly a case like Roe v. Wade, or maybe a case like, on the other side of things, I don't know, Heller, the Heller case about firearms. Still a relatively new case. Is it widely agreed upon that Americans feel that way about guns? I don't know. Yeah, there you go, Sherman. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, although she agreed with the outcome, she wasn't a big fan on how the Roe v. Wade was decided. And sure enough, Roe v. Wade is a case that has sort of been hollowed out in a lot of ways. And, we talk about Roe v. Wade, but I suppose the real controlling decision now is a later case from, I want to say 88, 89, called Planned Parenthood v. Casey. And the Casey decision sort of hollowed out some of what the Roe decision was based on, while nevertheless preserving, I would say, the most essential part of the ruling. Basically, Roe v. Wade read a right to privacy in the Constitution and then determined that that right of privacy included, among other things, a right to abortion. Then Roe v. Wade says, all right, so when does the state's interest kick in with abortion, versus the interest of the mother, right? And so Justice Blackmun, Harry Blackmun, who authored the decision and I think had the single biggest role in that decision, he came up with a trimester framework, right? First 3 months, state has no right to interfere with abortion. Second 3 months, case-by-case basis. Last 3 months, the state could go so far as to ban abortion during the last 3 months of pregnancy, if it wanted, right? Because at that point, it's a little closer to baby territory, right? Neoliberal Project, it's so good to hear. It's so good to have you here. I want to tell you, by the way, and this is to everybody in here. I'm going to get back to the abortion thing here in a minute, but I have been drawing up a neoliberal policy bracket, and it's hard as hell to think up different policies that can go up against one another without seeming weird and wacky. Like, how do we put Jones Act up against carbon tax? I don't know, So that's something I've been working on. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit after we talk about the Supreme Court stuff. I think it'd be a lot of fun. It's just, it's hard to figure out who goes with what, Like, it's a little easier, and I like the way... Oh, and by the way, I want you to know, this is first announcement. Let me see. Hold on a minute. Here. Big announcement, folks. Come on, I want a big announcement sound. All right, big announcement. All right, I have decided that I am. I will not be participating in the shill bracket election for this upcoming cycle in March. If nominated, I will not campaign. If elected, I will not serve. I have had such a wonderful opportunity here through the shill bracket to grow and to meet so many wonderful new people that I really want to share that experience with somebody else. And I think there's been a pretty good precedent in terms of people holding it for a year and then kind of going on to somebody else. So that's kind of where I'm at. There are a lot of great people, and I'd really like for them to get a chance to do that. So I'd like to participate in some other ways, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking, something a little more like that, Sherman, because again, it's just been so cool. Just like the last year's been great. I'm not stopping the stream or anything. I'm still going to call myself Chief Neoliberal Shill. I'll add the emeritus to it. But I really want other people to get that chance to really participate. And get that bracket experience, because it was just so cool to meet so many really cool people and just, make a lot of really cool connections, So I'd like to keep doing that. So I'm not going anywhere. I just, I wanted to put that out there. And yes, if I'm invited, I would love to come. I didn't get an email about an invitation or anything, but if I'm invited, I will definitely be there. So yeah, that would be great. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking on that show bracket. But I definitely am still going to participate. I was thinking it might be fun to like invite people if they'd like to chat with me for like quick interviews in between rounds, stuff like that. But anyway, is Chief Shill like president? Once you are one, you get to be called it for the rest of your life. Well, I'll tell you, my favorite previous Shill, Chief Shill, was a fellow by the name of Scott Lincecum, who is, I retweet him all the time. Just a really great, just a really great presence online. And he still calls himself one. So if he can do it, I can do it. All right? Okay. So, like Washington, like our Supreme Court justices, I believe in the power of precedent, in the virtue of precedent. So, okay. And yeah, he does good. He does do good work with the Dispatch. Although I recently attacked somebody, former Trump administration member on Twitter, who works for the Dispatch. I felt kind of bad afterward. I was like, I hope I didn't offend these lovely other people at the Dispatch whose work I like. But just, I can't remember her name. But anyway, it just, she had this sort of take where her take was basically, hey, we need to, yeah, Sarah Isker. I didn't like this whole take of, there's this sort of line of argument that says our political moment at present is the result of just, we can't, we can't communicate with one another, And I just like, for some reason, I snapped when I read this, because it was either on January 6th or right after January 6th, the anniversary. I just snapped because it was like, look, I know that there are a lot of insane lefties on Twitter. All right. I know that. I've, had my share of fights with them, but man, what Democrats have done in office to our democracy versus what Republicans have done in office to our democracy, it's a little different. All right. And her boss was stealing or trying to gin up a pretext to steal voting machines, Donald Trump, President Trump, and say what you will about all the Democrats, all the quackadoodles in the K-Hive, all the, all the out there of the Bernie people, although not Bernie himself. He seems all right as an individual. All the riding with Biden cringe. Nobody on the Democratic side of things, none of them come close to that, So it's, that both sidesism really just, sometimes it really frustrates me. And, anyway, I get it, when it comes to the Twitter discourse being fiery on all sides. But man, it is not the case in our present political moment that the parties are the same and just as bad in different directions. It's just not true. And I say this as somebody who regularly thinks, man, I wish there was a normal Republican Party I could vote for. A normal Republican Party that stood for all these things that I believe in. Because if you watch me, look, if you listen to me, you can tell I have a very conservative disposition. All right? I just think I happen to be one of the last real American conservatives out there because I want to preserve American institutions. Free market economy, the Supreme Court, freedom of speech, a general open society, all that kind of stuff, And the conservative movement today seems to be a lot more about shredding a lot of established institutions. So, in that sense, anyway, that's something maybe we'll talk about sometime. This idea of, I don't know, normie conservative, like for me, just as one example, for example, trans rights, you may have an opinion along the lines of somebody who says, well, I think we're going a little too far, a little too fast on some of these trans issues, right? But there are so many people out there who seem like, on the right, who seem like in reaction to cultural change that's happening too fast, they want to go and take the approach of shredding our institutions to stop it. And by institutions, I'm talking about government, talking about norms and how we govern our society. I don't particularly care so much about what goes on in universities, what goes on in businesses. I care about the operating system of society, the law, right? And I just, even when there are cultural changes that I disagree with, I just don't think it ever, it rarely makes sense to say, you know what, here's an example, just to give you one example of kind of the absurdity of where this thinking leads you. Let me show you here. I'm not trying to pick on trans people here. That's just kind of the issue I think that has driven, made a lot of people think, things are going too far, too fast. Let me pull this up here for you. No, this isn't a hot take. I just have to pull up the position. Yeah, the emoji tweet. That's the one. I just wanna find it here real quick. And by the way, please do save your questions. I will endeavor to answer all of them. Okay. All right. So, Josh Hammer says, American culture... All right. So, Apple has decided to do some emojis of a pregnant man and a pregnant, I think, non-binary person and a person with a crown. I mean, they just look like, jaundiced out Simpsons characters, right? And, it's like, look, I think these are kind of cringe, but they don't matter, man. I mean, other people might think they're based. And in any event, nobody's forcing them on me. They're emojis. If I don't like them, I don't have to use them. Well, Josh Hammer, this writer who... His work's been in Newsweek. I don't know if he's a regular columnist there or sometime columnist. He says, American culture is rotting from within. Right liberal pleas for competition and marketplace of ideas now invariably fall on deaf ears. What is needed is firm, unapologetic state action to vanquish wokeness in the name of the common good. Period. And it's just like, damn, man. Are you for real? You want to haul out the guns and crack skulls? Which is what the state ultimately does, when it sets upon a course of action and people decide they don't want to go forward with that course of action. That's what it has to do. It has to crack someone's skull, one way or another. It just feels to me, beyond all else, a very... the opposite of conservatism here, I think the real American conservative would recognize, look, freedom of expression, as it exists in the United States, is special, unique, and rare, all right, among all the nations of the world. And what we do in the United States has worked quite well for us over the broad sweep of history. And you know what? There may be some things about our present cultural moment that are, a bit of a challenge to, I suppose, maybe those of us who have a more socially conservative bent. But we have to remember, all right, we're thinking about institutions writ large, right? We're thinking about the things about this country that we'd like to conserve, the things that make it unique and special and rare. It is not the fact that we use state force to crush opinions we don't like. It is quite the opposite. That despite all our other flaws, we are actually quite good at giving even the most reprehensible opinions, even the most out there opinions and speech, space to breathe, right? And it seems to me like, so I don't normally call myself a conservative, but I feel very deeply like I basically am, in the sense of wanting to conserve American institutions, right? And even if there's something that maybe, I don't know everything about, like trans rights issues. It seems to me like, again, this is just another basic question of American institutions, right? Forget all that stuff that people on Twitter get into where they're constantly, going at, trans radical feminism and all these different issues. I don't know anything about all that, right? But I know this. In the United States, generally speaking, we let individuals make their own decisions about how they want to govern their own lives, all right? We let individuals make those decisions for themselves. And generally speaking, even if we might feel those decisions are bad for those individuals, it's their freedom to choose. At the end of the day, it's their freedom to choose. And if people want to choose to make decisions we disagree with, that doesn't matter. That's been core to the American experience from the start. Or at least it's been part of the part of the ideals that we've aspired to live up to, right? And so while the particulars may vary, may change over time, it's really not so different, from somebody coming here to the United States 400 years ago. Well, it wasn't the United States back then. Coming here to the United States to live their particular religious truth, or whatever, right? At the end of the day, we might say, hey, that's not for me. But, if they want to live, they want to live their lives the way they want to live, what matters is that they have the freedom to do so long as they're not infringing on me. And what does it mean to infringe on somebody else? Does it mean that you say something, that they don't like? Does it mean that you have hey Vivian, it's good to see you. Yeah, you have a diamond here. If you don't burn books, you can't stop the evil. Yeah, true. Right? If you want to burn books, you can. You just burn your own books. You don't get to go to the library, haul them out, and burn them. I mean, I guess you can, but you have to go through a democratic governmental process for that, right? And generally speaking, we don't do that in this country. So anyway, the long and short of it is, I don't really, analyze a lot of those issues in the ways most people do, but to me, it just seems like new situations, old existing institutions, right? And if those new situations do not fundamentally threaten the institutions that we're talking about, freedom of expression, democratic government, free market economy, then it's just a matter of, suppose you just kind of, live and let live, right? As with religion, as with all the other choices that people make in their lives, and that's it, The only real thorny situation comes when we're talking about government money, government forums like public schools or, public spaces, and that's always a challenge. It's always a fight, as it's always been from the beginning of the country. There was never in American history this period that some people, I think, seem to imagine ever existed, where we all kind of had a basic consensus as to what American society is like. There was never a religious consensus. The terms were just drawn differently. Now in the United States, we have a lot more. Let me turn some music back on. In the United States today, we have a much better developed, I suppose, concept of two concepts, right? Whiteness, and Christianness, right? But in the past, in our less diverse society, well, it was sort of diverse in different ways, right? There were Christians, there were Catholics, and Anabaptists, and Congregationalists, and, all the various different groups of people, Quakers, and Baptists, Anabaptists, Mormons, all the rest of it. And they're all still here, right? But those were the big quarrels of the time, the big differences of the time. I read something from Benjamin Franklin recently. Let me see if I can find this. And as far as race goes. Let me see here. Oh, yes, okay. This will be a good one. All right. Race. Oh, it's a good one. All right. Let's see. I don't know, actually. First of all, I gotta find the right one, because I don't know if it's real. Okay. All right. Okay, actually, yeah, this is real. All right. Yeah, and this is the one. You'll know what I'm talking about here. All right. It's from Ben Franklin. Okay. Why should the Palatine Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements? The Palatine is in the Palatinate, as in a part of Germany. And by herding together establish their language and manners to the exclusion of ours. Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them? and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion. Which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. All Africa is black or tawny. I don't know what tawny is. Asia chiefly tawny. I guess that means maybe somewhere between black and white. America exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. As are the Germans also. The Saxons only excepted, who with the English make up the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. So again, just to be clear, in Benjamin Franklin's time, and I do not in any way mean to denigrate Benjamin Franklin's great contributions to human liberty or human science, but in Ben Franklin's mind, in Ben Franklin's time, and he's not the only one at the time who felt this way, white people were English and occasionally Saxon. All right? So not even the whole island of Great Britain, right? You know? So anyway, the point is that what was the past, right? Just people fighting over other stuff, you know? And now, you know, after living together for so long, all these white people kind of merged and become mostly one thing. And now we fight over new stuff, new differences. And in time, we'll have new ones beyond that. Why don't you try conserving that founding idea? You lie when you call yourself conservative. Well, first of all, American Heart 1776. I suppose I would say this. First of all, I don't call myself conservative in the political sense, but I do think that I'm conservative in the sense of conserving American institutions. But beyond that, doesn't mean that every institution is worth conserving. Not to mention, it's ridiculous to ask somebody, well, why don't you try conserving things that existed before you were born? They were gone long before I ever walked the earth. Long before anyone else in here ever did. These various ideas from Benjamin Franklin. There's nothing to conserve. It'd be as great a change to society to go back to something like that as it would be to go toward any kind of left-wing communist fever dream. All right, it's the fact that it was in the past, the fact that something existed in the past does not mean, you're conserving it to go back to it. It's a change just as great, just in another direction. All right. Anyway, have you ever read Oakeshott? Yes, I have. I did read a great essay by him not too long ago, and I think it helped me kind of appreciate the difference in different types of conservatism that I'm mentioning here. And you know what? Let me see if I can find a link to it for anybody who might be curious. Yeah, exactly. It's as big a change as anyone can imagine. All right, let me see here. I don't know. I had it here. I just gotta find it. Okay. So anyway, we were talking about law and precedent a minute ago. Let me see if I can go back to that. But in the meantime, if you're interested in Oakeshott's writing about conservatism, there's a link for you. Check it out. And by the way, I see we have so many wonderful people in the chat right now. Hey, if you're not already following me on twitter.com, you're missing out, folks. You really are missing out. I think you ought to check it out. I have a wonderful Twitter channel full of all kinds of Twitter account. Look at this comment. I posted this, hey, shill office hours, and this guy says, Bastiat having a globe moment. I am a globe moment. All right, meridians, there you go. Boom. Okay. And we like the comment. Why do we like the comment? We like people who engage with us, all right? As long as they're not rude. Okay. And yes, I agree. Thank you. Give me some money. All right, that link is the Oakeshott essay that Lucien Lovejoy was mentioning. Also, I think, I don't know if this, I think it's from a book. The essay I linked, I thought was from a book called Rationalism in Politics. So if you're interested, that's where it's from. It didn't work? The link didn't work for you? Huh. Well, let me here's what we'll do. I'll tie it all together here for you real quick. Okay. All right. I just put the link in our general chat in our Discord. There's a link to the Discord. If you're not already in it, check it out. And hey, hopefully, Casual Philosophy, you can join the Discord and join the general chat and, you know, get that link, and hopefully it works. I just tested it on a incognito window, so it worked for me. Should work for you. All right? Hopefully. Making sexy eyes the M&M lady in the candy aisle. True. All right. So, what were we? Oh, so we were talking about law and precedent. Here's what I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to go get a drink real quick. I will be right back. Let me put on a video here real quick. You guys can watch something while I'm getting a drink. No, I'm just going to go get a drink. I always end up doing this. Be right back. Okay. All right. Boom. Hey, JRJM, thank you so much, by the way, for being here. I do appreciate it. And thank you for subscribing. Right on. Okay. It's too quick. True. All right. So, we were talking about law and precedent. And, gosh, where were we? Video next time, please. Normally, I put on those, let's see, History Matters videos. They're pretty good if you haven't watched them before. They're like 4 minutes long. They're always pretty fun. Okay. So, I don't know if anybody remembers the last legal question we were talking about. But, alas, it's gone. Oh, yeah, we were talking about precedent, right? Which kinds of precedents are good, which kind of precedents are not good. We were talking about Roe and other decisions. Yeah, I saw that one, PSP Mike. Ugh. If you want the interventionist take, follow me on the Twitter. That's like a third of what I post and retweet. That, and then occasionally, what I try and do, see, my growth strategy has always been this. Yeah, legal precedents, like court cases. My growth strategy has always been this, all right? I fully recognize that most people these days, especially you Zoomers, you don't really care about the whole market economy, procedural stuff. What you want is the memes, all right? And what I try to do is I try and wrap the content in the memes, all right? So that then, hopefully, a few of you will stick around for the content, all right? So that's what I do. Also, this one cracked me up, the Wordle thing. Somebody pasted that in our Discord, and I was like, yoink. All right. So, raid incoming, right on. Raid Shadow Legends. Not a game I enjoy. Not much of a game. What do you think of artists creating content under work for hire arrangements? And then, hey, a Taptage raid. Right on, folks. Taptage is, Taptage gotta be one of my favorite personalities on the Twitter, on the Twitch. Folks, be sure to check out her content. If you're 18 or older, don't click that link if you're not. If you do, you're banned. So don't click it unless you're 18 years or older. But otherwise, great link and a lot of delightful content there. And on her Twitch channel, which you can find right here. All right? So thank you so much, Taff. I really do appreciate that. Good to have you. Taff has been streaming a lot now. I think she debated Destiny. I still got to watch that. I saw a little bit of it, but... All right. Do you play chess at all? I do not. In fact, I've only played it once. Yeah. I'm more of a Monopoly guy. I love me a good game of Monopoly. Just, Monopoly is a thoroughly unappreciated game in the modern era, I think, because it's not about speed, all right? It's about slowly grinding your friends and grandparents into the dirt and then crushing them. And that's my kind of board game. All right. Oh man, it's just fun. You know, I enjoy it. It's fun too because you kind of have to work together. You have to negotiate, but also, you know, you are, you know, enemies. So it's interesting. You know, how you keep your hair so perfect. Step 1, get a good stylist. All right, the cut, most important element. Step 2, wash it. You know, regularly. You know? Step 3. Use a small amount of Kevin Murphy styling hold on your fingers through your hair. And then, step 4, I blow dry, and I've got a twisty brush that I use to kind of give it some volume. And then I touch it up at the end with some dry shampoo that kind of volumizes it a bit. You know, so that's what I do. And of course, have parents with good hair. That's true. All right. But there's definitely, you know, you gotta make the best of what you got too. You know, like I think I've showed some pictures of me back in high school. It certainly looked like a dweeb. You know, I didn't take care of my hair at all. And yet, you're right, Lucy and Lovejoy. The original goal of the game was to be a critique of capitalism. But it's fun. All right. Okay. So, anyway, the long and short with legal precedents is this. All right. They're not all created equal, but they are important, all right? Because if you don't have some predictability and some finality in law, well, it becomes very difficult, I think, to manage a body of law through anything except a very active legislature that just passes codes for everything. And that's basically the alternative. That's civil law. And, you know, civil law, I suppose, is fine for, you know, the countries that do it and want it. I mean, you know... but I suppose I prefer our common law system. It took 40 minutes of me watching you for you to finally spit out that basic bitch opinion. Dog, I am the basic bitch. All right? If you're here looking for somebody who wants to burn it all down, you're not going to find that somebody. So you want a basic bitch? That's me, my friend. All right? But no, it's not just that, right? Not just that. Because not all precedents are created equal, right? So, you know, when you've got something that is rooted in the most spurious of reasoning, right? Something that you really can't work with very well. Something that, like, say, the slaughterhouse cases does, all but eviscerates a part of the Constitution. Now, let me make sure I've got this right. Yeah, the Privileges and Immunities Clause, right? You know, and even to his credit, people criticize Clarence Thomas for this, but he at least brings up the issue. You know, they've all been, eviscerated by the, reduced in terms of their meaning, very much so, by the, slaughterhouse cases. So I think you could argue very reasonably, hey, those cases have been around for 150 years, but, hey, you know what? Maybe, actually, you know, the rights protected by the 14th Amendment, the privileges and immunities protected by the 14th Amendment are a little more than as they were narrowly construed by the Supreme Court in the slaughterhouse cases. So, you know, it's, not all precedents are equal. There's certainly room to argue against precedents, but at the same time, you know, they're not all equal, you know. Some of them, most of them, you know, should stick, you know. All right, do you support the constitutionality of the eugenics precedent? I don't know which case you're talking about. I'd have to check it out before I, said, yes, I have an opinion on the eugenics case. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm probably against it, but I don't even know what you're talking about there. Okay. Did you learn what AGP means? I think I did. I think that's where somebody says that trans people, not trans people, where a man fantasizes about himself as a woman. And I think some people use that concept as a way to knock trans people and say that it's just a fetish. Remember when Trump's lawyers quoted Korematsu? Yeah, bad news bears. Do you think the Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade in the Mississippi case? Probably. Richard Posner is more based. I'm going to watch his stream. Oh. Yeah. I mean, you know, keep in mind, they have been building towards something like that for the last 50 years. So, I mean, what's it like on the front lines of the culture war? Well, I'll tell you, my friend. It's a nasty place. Somebody's got to be there. Somebody's got to fight. A good fight. I'll tell you. I'd do it gladly. All right? Let me tell you, for example. I used to fucking black block in the husk of a... Holy fucking macaroni. What the... Nice guy, but no fire. He needs to feel the... I'm going to do the culture war stuff right after this. He presumably me, needs to feel the weight and warmth of a burning Molotov in his hand, smell the stench of gasoline and sweat, choke on some tear gas and the smoke from a burned-out police car. Really just needs to fuck in black block in the husk of a looted one. What is black block? Is that like... Hold on. Black block. Oh, black clothing. I see. Yes, that's where you wear the face mask and all that. Yeah. I don't know. That looks... sex with these folks seems like a very smelly endeavor, alright? But I appreciate the gist of what you're saying, okay? There are plenty of people out there who wanna burn stuff down. I'm not among them, alright? Okay. Anyway. Okay, culture wars. Look. I sometimes wonder. Let me give you my thoughts on these culture wars here. While I'm looking for the culture wars tweets, I will say that I used to dabble in these worlds in college, in the lightest sense of the term, because I wanted to meet women. I remember I went to some kind of protest. I don't know what it was for, but I went to some kind of protest in my first year of undergrad, just to, kind of, I met this girl when we were those proselytizing religious preachers with the big signs that say, "Oh, you're all going to hell." There were some of those on campus, and we were kind of jeering at one with in the square, and this girl was kind of in on it, and I started talking to her, and anyway, so that's my very light experience with it. All right. Okay, so didn't you also support Trump, Bastiat, once at a time? I did. That was back in my right after law school. I was angry. And all kinds of things. And I didn't date a chick at a protest. I went to a protest to try and date a chick. And I thought, oh man, jabbing Hillary. Man, that's not what America should be about, man. There should be more give and take. There should be more, things shouldn't be so frigid, so stolid. And so right after he declared, I thought, oh, this is great. It's hilarious. And you sort of think, oh, all that stuff he said, he doesn't mean it. Well, it was fun at first. And of course, it's always fun when you're also white, and so none of this stuff could ever really apply to you. But, after a couple of months, he said something at a debate where he said, well, we're going to go after terrorists and their families, folks. I'm going to go after the families of terrorists. And I just thought, God damn, you really are an authoritarian. You are way past, garden variety conservative. You're just straight up tyrant. As soon as you get the means, as soon as you get the ability, you will go for it, and at that point, it went from real fun, because he's a funny guy. It went from fun to terrifying pretty quick, so. But that being said, hey, it was admittedly just hilarious to watch him eviscerate all of these other Republicans because, of course, you don't really know. I didn't know much about Trump. You know, a lot of people did, I guess, but you don't know so much about Trump, but you know about these Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. You know, all these people whose views are as flimsy and as gelatinous as their general personalities, and you know. When he gets up and says, your brother failed on 9/11. I wouldn't have done that if I was in office. You know? 9/11, Iraq, that was a disaster. And then all these Republicans are booing him. And at the time, I don't know if anybody as famous as Trump, let alone somebody on a political stage other than maybe Ron Paul, had said anything to that effect about 9/11 or about America's wars overseas. And so it was quite refreshing to hear him say that and eviscerate these hapless Republicans. But after a while, then it's like, Jesus Christ. Jeb Bush may be a little flimsy, a little gelatinous, but not really a threat to democracy, you know? So now, Hillary versus Jeb, please, you know? It's not going to happen, but... All right. Culture war. Yeah, I know he said a lot in the 80s, too. You know, the signs were always there if you wanted to see him, you know. All right. I actually met Jeb once, you know, at a high school, on the day of a high school class election. All right. Culture war, folks. Culture war. Right here. In fact, let's get some culture war music. Is there anything like this? Let's see. We'll at least say progressive political music. We need something to fit this, you know. Okay, something to fit this. Oh, this looks good. Okay, right here. I'll tell you about Buck v. Bell in a bit. All right. Remember Tucker Carlson talking about the M&Ms? And it's just like, when I see this stuff, maybe it's a cop-out, all right? It may be a cop-out. Feel free to tell me if you think it's a cop-out. When I see the M&M company come out and say, the orange M&M is, he's anxious because, that's the way a lot of people are today, and mental health and all the rest of it. And the green M&M, she's not going to be so thoroughly sexualized anymore and all the rest of it. I just think, look, these companies know what they're doing. They're smart. Their goal is to maximize shareholder value, as indeed it should be for any company. They're just trying to stir up some controversy because they know people will talk about it and think about M&Ms. And I'll tell you, folks, I bought 2 more packs of M&Ms in the last week than I've ever bought, than I've purchased in the last 2 years. This stuff works, all right? It works. That's it. That's what it's all about. They don't feel one way or another. They're just trying to sell you something. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I will say, it strikes me as a little bit insane when somebody looks at this kind of stuff and says, you know what, the green M&M? It's a sign we're losing our culture, folks. And I mean, it's the same script every time. This is what I made. Minnie Mouse, right? Oh, she's wearing a pantsuit now. Oh, no! This one's my favorite, though, right? Never forget what they took from you. With Lola Bunny, who, this is the Lola Bunny from Space Jam 1, as opposed to Lola Bunny from Space Jam 2, who is now very flat-chested, desexualized somewhat. All the rest of it here. So anyway, that's culture wars, I guess, and it just I am always tempted to say that most of the time they aren't really a reflection of anything particularly serious, because a company wouldn't come out with something like, say, a redesigned version of its main character unless, generally speaking, they figured that it was a safe thing to do, because these are valuable assets. Minnie Mouse, Lola Bunny, the green M&M. These are tangible, valuable assets. You could sell them for lots of money, presumably. I don't know. I don't work in that world, but you don't tinker with them for reasons of social justice. That's not what you're really doing. what you're doing is you're trying to sell products, and you're deploying these assets in such a way as to more effectively sell your product, your movie, your Disney ticket, your candy, you know? And maybe this isn't always true. Maybe there are companies out there that really do, do this stuff for social purposes, but I really do think it's few and far between. I really do. So I just don't view any of this stuff as a real threat to our culture, our society, even when it seems very distasteful to me. Like, for example, I don't remember any specifics, but I remember something that, what was his name? Nike, Ben and Jerry's does stuff sometimes that's quite weird. And it's like, oh, we're not going to sell ice cream in the Palestinian territories. We're going to keep selling it, though, in the Gulf states. Very authoritarian, arguably slave states, But the repression in the Palestinian territories is unique, and we care about it more than we care about any other. And it's like, come on. No. You've made a decision. You got your audience, right? You've got your brand. You've got your buyers, and you know which issues resonate with them. You're not making these decisions for any other reason, right? That's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But to look at it and say, well, this is a sign that we need to do something as a culture. No. I don't think companies do this stuff unless the culture has already changed in one way or another. And I frankly don't think there's a whole lot you can do to change culture one way or another other than to get out there and mix it up in culture, make your arguments, persuade as you may, and the chips fall where they may, but anyway, so that's culture wars for our neoliberal friends. And I'll tell you, I am still committed to getting that bracket. I just, it's just been hard to think about how to put these issues up against one another. But I've got some. In fact, let me see. Oh yeah, the iPhone child labor, all that stuff, right? Let me see if I can find an example here. Let's see. Some, I wrote some down here. I don't know if I have the document here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Companies nudge bad ideas forward because the minority will still buy what my minority wants. Look, all I'm saying is, it's not about changing culture. It's about appealing to existing tastes, right? That's it. It's not about, I guess some people might disagree with this position, but I think generally speaking, it's not about shaping tastes. It's about reaching existing tastes, right? It's about shaping your product, which is ultimately far more in your, ability to change than somebody else's tastes. It's about shaping your product or the perception of your product to meet those tastes. And you're right, Sherman. It is a push and a pull, but I generally am skeptical. All right. Nice clip. I don't know what I'm looking at there, but thanks for sending that, Cicero. That's my thoughts. Nice clip. The intent is irrelevant if it normalizes a new trend. The trend is already normalized if the company is doing it, is the point. All right? If you don't like what the company is doing, the culture has changed at that point. It has already changed. So I suppose it's up to you to try and change it back. All right. Green and M&M as a hard shell would have been... Thanks, Dylan. I appreciate the take. Nika Sam, it's good to see you, buddy. And by the way, folks, if you are so inclined, you can subscribe to this incredible channel to get some incredible new emotes. Well, new to you. And eventually we're going to add some new ones on too. We got some good ideas for some tonight that we're going to add in. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hey, please do consider it. It sure does help me keep on with the channel. I'll only subscribe if you're pushing what? I don't know what that is. But yeah, please feel free to subscribe. Beyond that, Twitter. Trying to get back into doing this stuff. Twitter, Discord, and YouTube. Be sure to check out our other online content. All right? This law firm is sponsored by Saudi Arabia. Get that trash out of here. What is that? Get that trash comment out of here. It's false. It's a defamatory falsehood. And Cicero, thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate that. Oil, that's right. Operation Iraqi Liberation. I don't know what kind of oil you're talking about, my friend. Destiny is pushing. Okay, let's see what this is. Oh, hell, I don't know what that is. Thoughts on the Ukraine discourse? Well, that's a good question. That's a good question, Sherman. I'll tell you what I think about the Ukraine discourse. So, it strikes me as quite strange that that the discourse seems to have involved. Yeah, I saw Destiny in a pool. Yeah, and he, looks like he's having fun with his. Hold on a minute. Having fun with his, his delightful wife. I think they're married now. So good for him. Good for them. What was I going to say? So Ukraine discourse, yeah. All right. So for those who don't know, Ukraine is a country in Eastern Europe that has been surrounded now on 4 sides by over 100,000 Russian soldiers. It was invaded in 2014 by the Russians in response to a change in government in 2013 and 2014 that they called a coup, and which I think is more reasonably and fairly, though, is somewhat messy. I would think of it more as a second chance at democracy for Ukraine. And in response to this change in government, the Russians invaded Crimea and sparked separatism, that's how I put it, in the east of Ukraine, right? And that has been going on since 2014. Well, now the Russians have come back in force and surrounded Ukraine with over 100,000 soldiers on 4 sides. In the north, Belarus. In the south, Crimea. In the east, the Russian border. And in the west, the small Moldavian breakaway state of Transnistria, where there is a contingent of Russian soldiers. Now, they're a relatively smaller part of this overall scheme, but the fact remains that Russia has surrounded Ukraine on 4 sides. Now, Joe Biden has repeatedly said that we in the United States will, if Russia should invade Ukraine, not deploy any troops to Ukraine. And ultimately, I'm feeling like that's a pretty accurate prediction, or a pretty accurate statement, given that Joe Biden has already withdrawn from Afghanistan, has already, ended almost all the drone strikes, is generally trying to recede from these kinds of violent engagements abroad. I think it's pretty reasonable to imagine Joe Biden is serious when he says there aren't going to be any American troops there. Nevertheless, a huge part of the Ukraine discourse has been this idea that the United States is trying to spark a war in Ukraine. And look, you can say a lot about America's role in Ukraine, and I'm about to, but that is false. The United States doesn't have any soldiers in Ukraine. To the extent it perhaps might have some kind of forces there that it hasn't disclosed. It might be, the kind of special forces training troops, Ukrainian soldiers on the ground, like we've got in Taiwan. That is to say, a trivial presence. There has been a lot of focus on the right-wing fascist elements of Ukraine's overall defense force. Certainly the Russians have made a point to highlight that. Most notably the Azov Battalion, which seemed to be a very right-wing National Socialist group. I suppose it's only worth noting that, one, Ukraine is, as I mentioned, surrounded on 4 sides, and so perhaps feels a little more drawn to make desperate alliances of convenience. But 2, it is also worth noting that as far as right-wing extremism goes, that is a problem not just in Ukraine, but in Russia as well. And in any event, Ukraine is not defined by this group. President of Ukraine is Jewish. The majority of Ukrainians are, who are armed, members of the Ukrainian armed forces. And so, yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to judge all the people of Ukraine by those 1,000 extremists any more than it would to, say, judge all the people of Syria by the presence of the Al-Nusra Front, the Al-Qaeda affiliated group, or anything else. To judge the United States by the presence of Atomwaffen. Of course, I suppose it might if Adam Waffen were on the front lines defending the United States from invasion. But again, in such a scenario, you might wonder indeed, well, I don't know, you know? If we're about to be invaded by a country that completely overpowers us in every conceivable way, perhaps again we might not be so quick to refuse offers of help, even from very unsavory fascists. So in any event, Ukraine also gave up its nuclear weapons that it inherited from the Soviet Union in 1994 under the Bucharest Memorandum. And that is a noteworthy piece of foreign policy history because the Bucharest Memorandum, fascists are on their side, perhaps on the wrong side. I don't think so, given that the other side is annexation to Russia, you know, total autocracy. So I'm not going to try and clean up the Azov battalion. My point is to try and argue that ultimately Ukraine, say, is far more good than bad. But in any event, so in 1994, the Ukrainians agreed to give up their nuclear weapons. It's not to deny what's going on. It's just to say, look, you know, it's certainly not Ukraine alone. But in any event, 1994, they give up their nuclear weapons. They give them back to the Russian Federation in exchange for security guarantees from Britain, the United States, and the Russian Federation, all of whom guarantee Ukraine's borders and agree to... I could pull up the text of the Bucharest Memorandum, but basically, while it's not quite the binding guarantee that NATO has, you know, an attack on one is an attack on all, it is nevertheless a guarantee to protect Ukraine's borders. Let me pull these up here. Yeah, thanks for that. Since you sent me the link here, let me see what the words were here. To refrain from the threat or use of force, to respect their sovereignty in their existing borders. So, you know, you can't invade, you can't change the borders. Now, Russia's position is that the Ukrainian government that this deal was made with disappeared in 2013, 2014. Naturally, that is not our position, but of course, our position is also that we, the United States, did not agree to a military commitment. Basically, we agreed to do what we could diplomatically. So, that leaves us here to today, all right? And, you know, nobody knows whether Russia will invade or not. It is generally regarded as a war that Russia would win, but would win at great cost to itself. The Ukrainian army of today is not the Ukrainian army of 2013, 2014 that really had no ability to resist Russia's incursion into Crimea. And it would no doubt be bloody for Russia, even if it would eventually win. And I guess the long and short of it is this. It seems to me that a lot of folks who are against a lot of folks have kind of raised this red herring of America trying to seek a war in Ukraine. And I think that is just a reprehensible kind of misstatement of what's going on. You know, there are no American troops in Ukraine, and there is nobody with the power to do so in America talking about putting American troops in Ukraine. Joe Biden has said he wants to deploy more American troops to Eastern Europe, but the other countries in the region, except for Belarus, are broadly American allies. So that would be entirely within our rights and a reasonable decision to do under existing American law, which includes, of course, the treaty guarantees we've made to NATO, or to our NATO allies. Nobody is seeking war with Russia. Everybody, I think, understands what something like that means, right? But it is tragic nonetheless that now in so many circles, particularly strangely enough, circles that you would think are rather progressive, are making arguments that are inherently, well, I would say anything but. Let me give you an example here. All right. So, who would profit if the U.S. dives headfirst into a wildly unpopular war in Ukraine? Who's diving into a war in Ukraine? Joe Biden has repeatedly said, we're not sending troops. And again, while Vladimir Putin has said, well, you know, we're not going to invade Ukraine, he does have over 100,000 troops surrounding Ukraine on four sides. We have no troops in Ukraine. I don't even think the Russians have alleged that we have any troops in Ukraine. So it is a very different guarantee. One is guaranteeing that they will not do something that seems very likely, given the language that they're using and the forces that they're building up, while we have guaranteed basically that nothing will change from this situation where we have no troops in Ukraine. Now, it is possible that other European countries may come to Ukraine's aid. I doubt it, but it is possible. And by come to their aid, I mean do more than what they're doing now, which is sending them weapons and training their troops and giving them money. Might actually send their own soldiers. Again, I doubt it, but, possible. And in any event, that wouldn't draw the United States in. I suppose it always theoretically could in some way, but it wouldn't automatically draw the United States in. So, this is an article from the New Republic where they make the argument that the U.S. is seeking war in Ukraine to benefit its natural gas industry. Which to me is a very strange argument, because one, we're already working, I don't want to say at full capacity. I don't quite know what that means in this context, but we're working at a very high capacity. Let me turn this music off. This is not what I want to hear. This is not, let's see. Paris Commune. All right, let's see this. Okay, let's see. No wedding music. What is this? Ooh, Debussy. All right, we'll go with that. All right, whatever. Who cares? Better than we were. Oh, yeah. Then we'll stick with this. Okay. Anyway, okay. Twitter. Lana Del Rey, no thanks. Not for this stuff. Also, I don't want to get the stream. They mute parts of it when you play music. Oh, you're right. Yes. Good call. Okay, there we go. Okay. Good call. All right. So who would profit if the U.S. dives headfirst in wildly unpopular war? And they're trying to frame this bill, which would basically provide incentives to ship natural gas to Europe, as some attempt to profit from war in Ukraine, or to drive war in Ukraine. And it just, I feel like the war in Iraq shredded a lot of people's brains, man, because this is just, suppose it's all true, and that everything the United States has done has been aimed at trying to convince the Russians to invade. Not true. I don't know how you could read it that way, but suppose it were. I mean, again, nobody is pulling the trigger on war, forcing the Russian army across the borders of Ukraine, except Vladimir Putin, who has the ultimate decision now. Right? The United States, no troops in Ukraine. As far as I know, some of the NATO countries do have a few, but ultimately the United States is the backbone of any kind of real risky action to Russia. And anyway, I just thought it was ridiculous. So kind of here's why. What bothered me about this take, and what bothers me about a lot of the Ukraine takes, is they all ignore the aggressor driving all of this. Putin's Russia, whose existence depends on exporting more fossil fuels, right? That's a small part of our economy. One near and dear to my heart, of course, but a small part of the overall picture for us. Surrounds Ukraine on four sides with 100,000 troops, and he alone decides peace and war. And this provision, or this section, really got me. The notion that there will be conflict with Russia and consequently a grave energy crisis has taken on an air of inevitability in U.S. coverage of tensions in the region especially. This may well not be the case, and there are options for avoiding the scenarios above. The United States could, for example, agree to not let Ukraine join NATO, closing off the option of the 82nd Airborne landing along the Russian border to fight a civil war in eastern Ukraine. First of all, the idea that Russia would cease its activities purely because we said, okay, now there's no chance that we will ever help Ukraine. That doesn't make a lot of sense, all right? Particularly in a moment where they've, marshaled all these forces at the border, all right? That's one. Not advocating for war. In American heart, if you can listen to what I'm saying and call that advocating for war, that reveals your own deeply inborn prejudices against the people of Ukraine and against the United States and against freedom itself. Better think about that, buddy. Right? Anyway, but yeah, right here. You know, they're just trying to frame it like the United States is at fault if Russia invades, as if, as one commenter put it, Russia is a force of weather. Oh, well, you know, these missiles, you know, short-range ballistic missiles today, better bring your umbrella. You know, Russia is another country ruled by people who've got agency, who can make choices, right? It's not a force of nature, but it is the force in question here that has the power to either pull the trigger or pull back from conflict. Right? There's no scenario, nobody believes, at least credibly, there's any chance of the United States starting hostilities here. That being said, you could argue, I think very reasonably, that while my position is correct in terms of you know, who would be responsible for initiating aggression, you could argue that the United States basically, that the fact that we're in this scenario is a reflection of the failure of foreign policy by the United States over the last 20 years. Or at least 15, I guess, since 2008, when in a, I want to say let me check this here. Budapest? I don't know if this was Budapest or Bucharest summit. The United States said basically that, well, NATO said, and the United States, of course, agreed to this, and I believe pushed this, Georgia and Ukraine would eventually find their way into NATO. Georgia, the other country, you know, central in the Caucasus. And what was I going to say? Yeah, so you could argue, as I think John Mearsheimer has argued, look, the United States never really, ever, absent, you know, Ukraine joining NATO, was ever going to come to Ukraine's rescue. All right? Because Ukraine is obviously far and away matters more to Russia than it ever would matter to us, right? And short of bringing it into NATO, at which time then defense of Ukraine becomes a question of the credibility and existence of the alliance itself, short of doing that, it was never a serious commitment because the Russians would always care more than we did. They would always be closer than we were. They would always be willing to put more on the line than we were. And so for us to lead Ukrainians on, like, oh, well, you know, keep on pushing and we'll be right there with you, that's irresponsible of us to do. And that has basically created a situation that has led to war, because we should have known that the Russians would never consent to Ukraine joining NATO, right? And while I may think, and while you may think, or you may not, you may be a goddamn Russo apologist or something. While you may think and I may think that Ukraine has the right to join whatever alliance it sees fit, of course, Russia does not. And from this comes the argument that Tucker Carlson and others have made, which I find very disgusting in one sense, but which is reasonable in another, that we would never permit Russia or China to set up bases in Canada and Mexico. And that's true. We would absolutely trample over the sovereignty of these countries, even beyond that which we already do trample on it, if that's what it took to stop that. Of course, the equivocation here is nevertheless awful, given that in one scenario we're talking about defending a democracy, and in another we're talking about perpetuation of an autocracy. That is an important distinction to draw. So you could argue that, hey, nevertheless, we know that the Russians would never consent to this any more than we would consent to their bases in Mexico. And while you might say, or while I Bastiat might say, look, it doesn't matter because we're democracy, we're the good guys, they're an autocracy, they're the bad guys in the broadest sense of the word, we should have known how they would react. We should have known that domestically there was never going to be the kind of interest and buy-in in fighting Russia over Ukraine. So, and yeah, Future Brain, I mean, we're us and they're them is a worthwhile consideration in the real world. Of course, I rest that, you know. I mean, ultimately, I'm us, right? I don't want to lose a war. I don't care how just the cause of them is. I don't want to imperil my own interests. But I'm saying here the real distinction is not so much us and them, democracy and autocracy. But in any event, the long and short of what I'm saying is, you could argue, I think, that American foreign policy was wrong to aspire in the way that it did to bring Ukraine into NATO and to bring Georgia into NATO, because we just were never going to come to their aid prior to their admission into the alliance, and we should have known that Russia would never allow it to happen without force. Right? That's the best argument I think you can make, and against America's record here in this. The idea that America is expanding east to attack Russia is, to me, seems quite senseless. But the idea that all of these countries on Russia's border, that they, having experienced 3 centuries, in Ukraine's case 4 centuries, of Russian domination, that they might want an alternative, that they might want to ensure their independence beyond the parchment guarantees of Russia's temporarily enfeebled leadership. That's a very reasonable thing for them to want. And in some cases, apparently, I haven't vetted this point, I read recently that one of the reasons that Poland, for example, was given a relatively fast track into NATO is that Poland was talking about, well, look, either you give us a chance to join NATO, or we'll go nuclear. Because either way, we are not going to submit to Russia again. Right? I mean, you're dealing with countries that have had very intimate experience, with their neighbors. And sure enough, when you look at what Ukraine is dealing with now, and you see that they gave up their nuclear weapons in 1994, and I know there was a big argument at the time that they really couldn't have put these nuclear weapons to much use, you must nevertheless imagine that in their present situation, they would probably like to have that deterrent. Indeed, if a country like Ukraine does end up really invaded and dismembered more thoroughly than it already has been by the Russians, how could you ever tell a country again, hey, you don't need nuclear weapons. You can defend, or rather, you can depend on the international community to guarantee your security. Gaddafi gave up his his weapons of mass destruction program. Well, I think getting rid of Gaddafi was a very reasonable thing to do, given that he was talking about going house to house and slaughtering his enemies. But if you're a government and you're looking at options for guaranteeing your existence in a dangerous world, it really does seem like the countries with nuclear weapons, North Korea, can do as they like and continue to exist. And the countries without nuclear weapons, Iraq, Libya, get flattened. And Ukraine will be another example of that if it comes to that. Now, that being said, our friends at the Neoliberal Project said, even in 2008, people thought Russia would become a liberal democracy. And I think that's, that was not an unreasonable take, for some time. I mean, there were some real attempts, to push forward a different way of doing things. But, nevertheless, I mean, if you're Poland or the Baltic states, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, say nothing of Ukraine, I think you might very reasonably say, well, look, we wish our Russian friends all the best, but, we'd like a backup just in case it doesn't work out, And of course, liberal democracy is no guarantee of peace either, right? The United States is a very warlike country, despite being a liberal democracy. And of course, we only attack illiberal countries. We don't attack liberal democracies, but nevertheless, So, I guess the long and short is, I feel like the United States should continue to supply material, money, training, diplomatic support, whatever it can, in Ukraine. I don't know about deploying troops. I would be up for that, but I don't think the political commitment is there. I don't think we have any support from our European allies in doing that. I think it would be us alone, And I think that kind of commitment threatens a real potential collapse of American standing elsewhere. I mean, if America's involved in a war with Russia, maybe suddenly Taiwan looks like it's at risk. And while Ukraine is a fledgling striving toward democracy, Taiwan is a democracy in being. In the center of the most important part of the world now, East Asia, right? In terms of economic value, in terms of the contest between democracy and autocracy. So, I think we would jeopardize our position there, and we would do so alone, it seems like. Doesn't seem like the French and the Germans are there with us. I suppose the British would be, even though right now, I mean, it's great to see support, I suppose, from Britain for Ukraine. But given what Boris Johnson is dealing with at home, it is hard to see that as something we could rely on. So it is easy to imagine that it's the United States and I suppose Poland, in Ukraine, alone. It doesn't seem like a winning situation right now, particularly given the attitude that Americans are feeling with respect to involvement overseas. So, that's the way I feel about that. Hopefully that's clear. And I'm very frustrated, though, by the takes that Americans are making about this, because once again, of course, we're trying to make this event all about us. And in the process, many people, particularly on the left, have made it about apologetics for Russia. And, I have nothing against the Russian people. Russian culture is obviously beyond question. Some of the most glorious in the world. It's a real civilizational type state, to the extent you believe such things exist. But it is led by an autocrat who has command over one of the most powerful military machines in the world, thousands of nuclear weapons, and is certainly a threat to all of his neighbors, accordingly. So, yeah. All right. Jeremiah, thank you so much for subscribing. I really do appreciate that. And you are quite right. Line goes up, world gets better. Generally speaking. Few exceptions to the rule, maybe inflation. Right? Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. And again, if I'm invited to our shill conference, the New Democracy Conference, I would love to go. What was I going to say here? So yeah, that's Ukraine. So hopefully that's an intelligible position. If you have any questions about it, if it doesn't make sense to you, if you think I'm off base here, please feel free to let me know. But that's the way I feel about it, I am just most frustrated by people who, and I think it is just incredibly dishonest to say this, that the United States is angling for war, when it is not. It is angling for no war. It is actually trying to talk to the Russians to find some diplomatic solution. But if they want the United States to just say Ukraine will never be allowed to join NATO, they're trying to kind of revive a situation in which the United States and Russia set the terms in Europe. And I don't think that's... that may be the material reality, that may be the military reality, but that is not the diplomatic reality, nor should I think the United States seek to make it such, And it is also worth noting, as Prime Remedy says here, Ukraine is still struggling to improve itself. It's made some progress, but it's got a long way to go, obviously. But Prime Remedy here says, look how awesome the Baltic states have become. Now that they're out, freed from the USSR. Hey, they are. They've made incredible progress. In some ways, eclipsed us. Their way of tracking and keeping medical records, for example, this is a small thing, I suppose, but it really kind of shows the nimbleness of these kind of new governments. They've made a lot of progress in improving their standard of living, improving the rule of law. They're not everywhere they need to be yet. They've made a lot of progress. They certainly rank among the other great democracies of Europe. Do the Russians have a legitimate reason to ask NATO to not allow Ukraine to join? Yeah, geopolitically, sure. But that said, while I understand why the Russians do not want their neighboring states to be in NATO, you have to understand why those same states want to be in NATO. Each of them has been repeatedly subjugated by force from Russia. The first time they were incorporated in the Russian Empire, the first time they were incorporated, and then after a brief period of independence after the First World War, their incorporation into the Soviet Union, again by brutal force. Whether it be the subjugation of Ukraine during the Civil War in Russia, or the subjugation of the Baltic states during the Second World War, or immediately before the Operation Barbarossa, but still during the Second World War. And now they're in that period where they've got themselves another brief period of independence so far. And they want to guarantee that independence. They want something. They're grasping for something because they recognize, look, without some outside help, they've got no chance, right? So I understand why Russia doesn't want us in Ukraine. The same reason anybody could understand why we wouldn't want Russia in Cuba or Mexico or Canada, right? And we can all recognize that large and powerful countries do not act based on moral principles, but act based on self-interest. But that doesn't change the fact that Russia has no right to invade Ukraine, even if we can all imagine perhaps this is the outcome of what has so far transpired. Doesn't mean that it's a decision within their right any more than it would be the right decision, any more than it would be righteous for any other invasion we might otherwise understand. All right. Do the United States have a right, for example, to invade Iraq? Well, dictatorship, flouting UN resolutions, all the rest of it. Maybe. Was that the right decision? Should it have been done? That's a very different question. What if the U.S. invaded Canada to stop them being friendly with Russia? I still think it's a different question, even if you imagine that scenario on a one-to-one equal basis, because the United States is a democracy. I think democracy is trying to protect themselves, fundamentally more legitimacy in what they do and why they do it than autocracy is doing the same thing. But that being said, I recognize not everybody agrees with that position. But yeah, I do take the position, I think John Mearsheimer actually called this a very extreme position, that an autocratic state is basically an ongoing crime at all times. It can never really be truly legitimate in any sense that a democracy can be. Of course, it's easy to imagine that as a way to sort of bootstrap yourself into justifications of behavior abroad that you wouldn't otherwise countenance in any other situation. But hey, that's the way I believe. All right, so that's Ukraine. Let me and I guess to put a pin in it, I'm really hoping a war does not happen because it will not benefit anyone. Perhaps in the long run, Russia will get a little more security geographically, but in the long run, I don't think they'll win out from it. I don't think we'll win out from it. I don't think anyone will. So I certainly hope there's no war. The U.S. less of a democracy than the U.K., so can they recolonize us? Yes. No. It would depend, I suppose, on what you meant by less of a democracy. We were no longer a democracy in any sense of the word, and sure, yeah, it would be justified for the old country to come on in and try and restore things. Yeah. If the United States, for example, had the ability to go back in time and invade itself in, say, 1850, back when it had, back when it had slaves, well, obviously the United States of the past was a brutal slaveocracy, even if by the standards of the time it was certainly more democratic than other countries in the world. That country certainly ripe for invasion. All right? Yeah. It's kind of a weird scenario, I suppose, but that's kind of the most consistent take I can imagine here. If you imagine the United States different, all right, based on its circumstances in the past, obviously, yes. I mean, because you're certainly not obligated to, invade a country and free all the enslaved people in that country, but you certainly have a right to. Whether it's a good decision or not is another question, but you are not obligated to stand aside while, 4 million people, I think, at the peak of American slavery were enslaved, from birth to death. So if the British Empire had said, you got to end slavery, and decided to invade over it, by the logic I expressed, yes, if they had reduced America to ashes in the process, well, I certainly would wish that hadn't happened, but they'd certainly be justified to invade on the pretext of ending slavery. That being said, probably better ways to end slavery than a giant brutal war, but that's sort of the way that we chose. So, anyway, all right. So hopefully all these hypotheticals at the end didn't mask the point. But I'm trying to explain that I appreciate the moral arguments here. And I also appreciate the argument that we in the United States should have taken a more realist approach to thinking about these issues. And the fact that we didn't is why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in today. And that perhaps if we had been more realist, less idealistic, perhaps Ukraine would not be facing invasion. Indeed, perhaps Ukraine would not have been dismembered in 2014. Even if it would be less free today. All right, so that's it. Hopefully diplomacy prevails and we can all get along, and ABC, somewhere around step Z, we can bring the Russians into NATO and get ready for the century-long contest with China. But we'll see. Long ways off. That's what a lot of the right-wingers, though, are saying, is we need, screw Ukraine. We need to recruit Russia. It's like we're a long way off from that. All right. Last bit here. Let's see. Buck v. Bell. The court upheld a statute instituting compulsory sterilization of the unfit for the protection and health of the state. Yeah, that does sound like one of the worst ever Supreme Court decisions. Let's see if we can find let's go to the text of it here. Let me find the text of it. So somebody's asked me, what is my opinion on the eugenics case? And I must indeed confess that I've not read the eugenics case. But with Google Scholar, we will read it. Google Scholar. Okay, thanks for that, Mr. Kowalski. And by the way, thank you, American Heart 1776, for letting me know that apparently I changed your mind. I'm glad to hear that. That means I'm doing something here. Okay. Buck v. Bell. Okay, Buck v. Bell. Oh, that's articles. We need cases. Buck v. Bell. No problem. Okay. 1927. All right. So I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but we will go through it a bit here, all right? Eugenics was in vogue for a while in the early 1900s among early progressives. Okay, let's see. Carrie Buck is a feeble-minded white woman who was committed to the state colony above, mentioned in due form. She is the daughter of a feeble-minded mother in the same institution and mother of an illegitimate feeble-minded child. She was 18 years old at the time of the trial of her case. Okay, let's see. Man, this is actually a relatively short case. Maybe we can read it. All right, we'll go through this here. And try not to get hung up on the language. All right, the language here is not really what's at issue. We're not, we're more interested in the ideas. The ideas at issue. Right, feeble-minded. It was 100 years ago. People had different terms to discuss things. We're more interested in the ideas. Okay, the case comes here under the contention that the statute authorizing the judgment of, sterilization is void under the 14th Amendment, as denying to the plaintiff in error due process and law and the equal protection of the laws. All right, let's see. Okay, this particular statute says that the health of the patient and welfare of society may be promoted in certain cases by the sterilization of mental defectives under careful safeguard. That the sterilization may be effected in males by vasectomy and in females by salpingectomy. I'm not sure what that is, but it's not really material, I suppose, to this. Without serious pain or substantial danger to life, that the Commonwealth is supporting in various institutions many defective persons who, if now discharged, will become a menace, but if incapable of procreating, might be discharged with safety and become self-supporting with benefit to themselves and society. So presumably the only menace these people propose is that they might breed. And the experience has shown that heredity plays an important part of the transmission of insanity, imbecility, etc. The statute then enacts that whenever the superintendent of certain institutions, including the above-named state colony, shall be of the opinion that it is for the best interests of the patients and of society that an inmate under his care should be sexually sterilized, he may have the operation performed upon any patient afflicted with hereditary forms of insanity, instability, or rather imbecility, and etc. On complying with the very careful provisions by which the Act protects the patients from possible abuse. Now, I'm no expert on this, but I was under the impression that this kind of stuff is not always transmitted by birth. Maybe not even primarily so. I don't know. The superintendent first presents a petition to the special board of directors of his hospice or hospital or colony, stating the facts and the grounds for his opinion. All right, verified by affidavit. So he's got to sign this and swear to the facts. Notice of the petition and the time and place of the hearing is to be served upon the inmate and also his guardian. And if there is no guardian, the superintendent is to apply to the circuit court of the county to appoint a guardian. If the inmate is a minor, notice is also to be given to his parents, if any, with a copy of the petition. The board is to see to it that the inmate may attend the hearings if desired by him or his guardian. The evidence is all to be reduced to writing, and after the board has made its order, I'm curious what that term would be, Jeremiah, because it does seem to me to be treadmill-esque most of the time in terms of what this would mean in real practice. The circuit court may consider the record of the board and the evidence before it, and such other admissible evidence may be offered, may affirm or reverse the order of the board and enter such order as it deems just. Finally, any party may apply to the Supreme Court of Appeals, which, if it grants the appeal, is to hear the case upon the record of the trial, and the circuit court may enter such order. Okay. There can be no doubt that as so far as procedure is concerned, the rights of the patient are most carefully considered, and as every step in this case is taken in scrupulous compliance with the statute, and after months of observation, there is no doubt that in that respect, the plaintiff in error has had due process of law. The attack is not upon procedure, but upon the substantive law, which I guess so far reading this seems to be the case. I mean, as far as... I see what you're saying, Jeremiah. Yeah, good point. I thought you were talking about this idea of procedure. Yeah, I guess procedurally, to the extent you can do this, that does seem like about the best method you could ask for. I don't know if anybody in here thinks there might be some better procedure you could do for this, but I think to me, the problem is not so much the procedure, but the fact that the state thinks it can do this. It seems to be contended that in no circumstances could such an order be justified, which is probably the general position people feel when they read this. It certainly is contended that the order cannot be justified on the existing grounds. Judgment finds facts that have been recited that Carrie Buck is the, quote, probable potential parent of socially inadequate offspring, likewise afflicted that she may be sexually sterilized without detriment to her general health, and that her welfare and that of society will be promoted by her sterilization. And thereupon makes the order. In view of the general declarations of the legislature and the specific findings of the court, obviously we cannot say as a matter of law that the grounds not exist, and that if they exist, they justify the result. We have seen more than once that the public welfare may call upon the best citizens for their lives. It would be strange if it could not call upon those who already sapped the strength of the state for these lesser sacrifices. Ooh. Often not felt by such as often not felt to be such. Okay. In order to prevent our being swamped with incompetence, it is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover cutting the fallopian tubes. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. But it is said, however it might be, if this reasoning were applied generally, it falls or fails when it is confined to the small number who are in institutions named, as not applied to the multitudes outside. It is the usual last resort of constitutional arguments to point out shortcomings of this sort. But the answer is that the law does all that is needed when it does all that it can. Indicates a policy, applies it to all within the lines, and seeks to bring within the lines all similarly situated so far and so fast as its means allow. Of course, so far as the operations enable those who otherwise must be kept confined to be returned to the world and thus open the asylum to others, the equality aimed at will be more nearly reached. God, it's like they don't, they don't really talk about the Constitution at all. Yeah, they just sort of ignore it. Man. That's nothing, man. Man, that's quite a tie into today. The principle. Have a good night, Simra. Thanks for coming. I appreciate the kind words and the subscription. Hope you're feeling better soon. This doesn't sound exactly like Justin Trudeau, does it? The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination broad enough to cover cutting the fallopian tubes. Ugh. But I will say, if you view public health, if you view, the needs of the many always outweighing the needs of the few, then even though we might find this disgusting, the principle is the same, just stretched to a disgusting level, is it not? I guess this sort of gets back to the idea I was originally talking about the value of a constitution, right? This is law without a constitution, right? It's based on a consideration of the public need. No real discussion of anybody's rights, just has the legislature, giving people a procedure here that they can follow. No real rights considered, I suppose, beyond that. And then, if, your state-appointed guardian deems you as being, somebody who should be, have your cods clipped, as it were, I suppose, for a man, then your cods are clipped, right? As long as they've given you notice and reduced all the evidence to writing, that's just the way it goes. So, so be it. And, God, I don't know. That's sort of why I feel like our system is a problem when we, ignore or try to get around our basic, the fundamental principle of our system, the American system, which is this, that we have a constitution that is above all the other law, right? And that when the legislature says, hey, you know what? We can sterilize you. Hey, you know what? By a pretty reasonable reading of the Constitution, equal protection of the laws, the idea that just because you may be mentally unfit does not mean that you should be deprived of the protection of your rights to, among other things, reproduce. Without that kind of protection, it's just this kind of stuff, I guess, forever. We just rely upon the wisdom of the people forever, and sometimes the people are very unwise, So let's see, how did this end up? Yeah, I know they're saying it's constitutional, but they're not evaluating. They don't even evaluate. They don't even discuss the constitutional angle. They just sort of say, and brush it aside. Let's see. We have seen, legitimized eugenic sterilization. So how did this end? Whoa! Although the opinion on eugenics remain controversial, I don't know what the contours on that are, me and Sleepy Girl, and admittedly I'm not going to dive into it right now. The decision in this case still stands. Buck v. Bell was cited as a precedent in Roe v. Wade, but not in support of abortion rights. To the contrary, Justice Blackmun quoted it to justify the constitutional right to abortion is not unlimited. Blackmun claimed that the right to privacy was strong enough to prevent the state from protecting unborn life in the womb, but not strong enough to prevent a woman being sterilized against her will. In the 1996 case of Feger v. Thomas, the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit both recognized and criticized Buck v. Bell by writing, as Justice Holmes pointed out, in the only part of Buck v. Bell that remains unrepudiated, a claim of a violation. Well, it also just kind of looks weird, Kowalski. Can I, what are the contours on this? Asking for a friend. Okay. No, it ain't the kind of stuff we rush job at midnight here on Twitch. The Equal Protection Clause, based on selective enforcement, is the usual last resort of constitutional arguments. 2001, Court of Appeals cited Buck v. Bell to protect constitutional rights of a woman coerced into sterilization without procedural due process. The court stated that error and abuse will result if the state does not follow the procedural requirements established for performing an involuntary sterilization. Man, I gotta say, I really don't like this idea of involuntary sterilization ever being an option. It seems to me that that's not justifiable. Whew, man. Although, admittedly, I guess I don't really know what the I don't know enough to know what the constitutional arguments are against this kind of stuff. But I mean, it seems to me that I guess it all does have to depend on how the 14th Amendment comes into play, because the states do have vast authority to engage in all kinds of public health police powers, and that authority is generally wide and recognized by the courts. And I don't know, man. I mean, I suppose it seems to me that see, I guess you've got to go back to those. Let me see. Let me look something up here. Let's see here. God, what is the basic idea here? I suppose. No, this isn't about that. I'm just curious about something else here. Substantive due process. I don't know much about this because I don't work with it really. It's not really a thing here that I do a lot with. But this is the last thing I'm going to look at, and then we're gonna call it a night. Courts have identified the basis for such protection of these unenumerated rights from the due process of the 5th and 14th Amendments, which prohibit the federal and state governments, respectively, from depriving any person of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. Substantive due process demarcates the line between the acts that courts hold to be subject to government regulation and acts that courts place beyond the reach of government interference. What are some examples of how these work? Just some basic examples here. Beyond abortion, which is always and forever under attack. In successful cases, the Supreme Court recognizes a constitutionally based liberty and considers laws that seek to limit that liberty to be unenforceable or limited in scope. Critics of substantive due process decisions usually assert that there is no textual basis in the Constitution for such protection, and such liberties should be left under the purview of the more politically accountable branches of government. Yeah, I don't know. I guess ultimately, hey, maybe this is motivated reasoning. We just don't have anything in the Constitution that really prevents that sort of thing. But I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking about people who are, all but incarcerated. And, God, I don't know, man. That seems like there's got to be some argument there for cruel and unusual or something like that, man. Because, I mean, that's got to be as fun. Like, the right to reproduce has to be as fundamental an element of life and liberty and pursuit of happiness as anything can be. And it is just so hard to imagine saying, yeah, you know what? State has the power to prohibit human reproduction. It just does, all right? I know the Constitution says, free speech and gun rights, but there's nothing in there about reproduction per se, and, I don't know. But, something else I don't know much about that I'd want to know more about is the Civil War amendments that apply the Bill of Rights to the states. I wonder how they apply the 9th and 10th Amendments. I don't know if they even do. Some of the rights are selectively incorporated. Let me see. Which rights are selectively incorporated? I wouldn't be surprised if they're just like, 9th and 10th, we don't care too much about that thing. I'm just curious here. And thank you for the subscription, Kowalski. I really do appreciate that. I'm really curious about this one. I'm just so curious here. Yeah, I will admit, I'm engaging in motivated reasoning right now. I don't like the idea the government can do this. So, it is what it is, I guess. Right, 10th Amendment is the one, I guess, at issue. That's the one that reserves the rights to the states and to the people, right, if they're not named in the Constitution. But what does the 14th Amendment do to the, if anything? Maybe nothing. 14th Amendment and 10th Amendment. Is there anything there? Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that some more. So yeah, I don't really know. But I will say right now I was engaged in some motivated reasoning because I don't really like that decision. I don't really want that to be constitutional, but it is hard to name, I suppose, which part of the Constitution it violates, right? So, okay, so we'll save that for another time. I wouldn't say that, of course, there isn't one. I'm just saying, right now I'm tired. It's late, and I'm not gonna start from scratch. Alex7537 says, I'm currently reading Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman, and he makes some pretty good points. What's your opinion on the book? I think it's pretty poggers, as the kids say. All right, so good choice. Good choice in the reading. All right, so what are we up to? We are going to visit, let's see. We're going to visit a great friend of the channel who I think you will certainly enjoy. Brian would say it's cruel and unusual. Scully would say it wouldn't. That's what I'm leaning to. The idea that this is not public health. This is punishment. I don't know, though, how I'd make that. All right, so we're going to go visit a great friend of the channel by the name of Lumi, who is, I think you'll really enjoy her content. All right, so we're going to go visit Lumi. Please do give her all my best. And, folks, if you haven't already, hey, follow me on the Twitter. Be sure to give me a follow on the Twitter. Click that link and give me that follow on the Twitter. The more people we get following me, the more guests we get on the show. And now that we're doing the show again, that'll be good stuff. If you haven't already, our Discord link is right there in the chat. Check it out. I think you will certainly appreciate it. If you join the community, if you like chatting about all this stuff all the time, 24/7, hey, check it out. All right. And beyond that, of course, we've got some old curated content on our YouTube channel. If you're new, I think you'll appreciate that too. So, hey, with all that, I hope you have a wonderful night. Give Lumi all my best. And, hey, may God bless the United States of America. May God protect our troops. That was pretty, hold on, that was a pretty scuffed salute. Hold on. May God protect the United States of America. May God protect our troops. We'll see y'all soon. Take care.